Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the regular council meeting for November 6, 2017. The meeting has already convened, so we've just come out of a recess from our in-camera portion, and we're now into the public open portion. Before we get started with the meeting, I want to say, with respect to decorum, a meeting of council is intended to be a place where democracy can freely take place in a respectful and safe manner. The council chamber is a workplace, and there are considerations council and staff must make to ensure that a safe work environment exists. Each councillor brings to the meeting their own individual personalities, attributes, abilities, and values. Each member of council is required to be respectful, not interrupt or disrupt another member of council, staff, or the public when they do not have the floor. Important attributes of the mayor and councillors include being fair and reasonable, objective and impartial, firm but friendly, confident but considerate, tactful and courteous, and confining discussion to within the scope of the meeting and within reasonable limits of time. Therefore, there will be no cheering, jeering, or other outbursts from the gallery to ensure that anyone speaking, whether it be a delegation, member of council, or staff, is not interrupted and do so freely without fear of ridicule. The microphones of anyone that is being inappropriate or has exceeded their time limit shall be cut off. If there are outbursts by anyone in the gallery, they need to be asked to stop, and if they do not comply, they will be asked to leave. A recess is another tool that we may use in order to reset the environment of the council chamber. It is our belief that if everyone is respectful of these basic considerations, this meeting and future meetings will be more effective in furthering the business of the City of Nanaimo. And I want to reiterate, the watchword tonight is respect. Council will show each other respect, we will show our staff respect, we will show the public respect, and we expect the same in return. I want to also recognize that this meeting is being held on the traditional territory of the Nanaimo First Nations. Ms. Curry, do we have any late items?
Thank you, Your Worship. This evening on the addendum, we have the addition of a delegation from Mr. Don Bonner for Agenda Item 8B, additional appointment to the Regional District of Nanaimo Board. We have for Agenda Item 10B, 100 Gordon Street, acceptance of project under Revitalization Tax Exemption Bylaw 2011 number 7143. We're changing page 2 of the report as follows. Under option 1, the budget implications, it's being changed. Under option 2, the budget implications are being changed. And under summary points, the second bullet is being changed as well. For agenda item 10C, Waterfront Walkway Draft Plan, we're replacing the report title Waterfront Walkway Draft with version attached to addendum. For agenda item 12B, Zoning Amendment Bylaw 2017 number 4500.112, we're removing that. We're reordering agenda item 12C, Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw 2016 number 6500.032 to agenda item 12A. Agenda item 12D, Highway Closure and Dedication Removal, Lake Road and portion of 102nd Street, Bylaw 2017 number 7245. We're adding delegations from David Murchie and Kerwood Agar. As well, under 16C, Other Business, Councillor Hong made a notice of motion on at the October 30th open meeting, and so we're adding that motion under Other Business, and I'll have the wording for you when it comes, or he does. And I believe Councillor Hong had an additional item as well.
Thank you. Before Councillor Hong chimes in, you said 7245. Did you not mean 7246? Be 12D.
12D. Okay, you think it's supposed to be 7246?
That's what we've got here.
Okay, so that probably is correct. It's just wrong in my annotated agenda, so let me just double check in the actual agenda. Yes, that's correct. So I was wrong. It is 7246.
Great, thank you very much. Other items, Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to add Mr. Gurjeet Gill to number 10E, the remedial action order for 1583 Bartlett Street as delegation. And then I also noticed on 16B, Councillor Kipp's name is missing a P.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to add Matthew O'Donnell as a late delegation to 16A, please.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
I'd like to add Richard Scott as a delegation to 16B, CCAN's motion.
Thank you. Okay, so for the additional items, Councillor Hong's motion to add Mr. Gill as a delegation. That's great. Can we have a seconder, please? Seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Thank you. No further discussions. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next one was Councillor Bestwick with Matthew O'Donnell as a delegation. So seconder, please. Seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Thank you. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And for the last one, Councillor Fuller with Mr. Richard Scott to speak to 16B. Seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Do we have to add the administration on Mr. Bonner as a late delegation? Not there? Do we have to vote?
Ms.
for
Curry?
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Councillor Kipp. No, those were late items that were made the addendum.
Okay.
Yeah, so they don't need
So it's only those items that come off the floor. Thank you. Now, motion to move the agenda as amended. Main motion. Moved by Councillor Thorpe, seconded by Councillor Hong. Thank you very much. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. All right. So we've got that. Okay. Motion for the adoption of the minutes for 2017, October 2nd. Moved by Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next one is minutes of the regular meeting of council for October 2nd. Moved by Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, call the question. All those opposed? Motion passes. Next one is minutes of the special public hearing of the special meeting of council, which is, of course, the public hearing on October. This can't be right. Can you correct your notes? That should be October 5th.
That's what I've got.
One says October 2.
Your Worship, I think it's a error on the annotated.
Okay, thank you. Okay, move the receipt of the minutes. Moved by Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next item, presentations. There are none. Mayor's report. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I just got back from 3 weeks of holidays, and I have to tell you that it was a very relaxing experience. And I want to give a shout out to our newest councillor, Councillor Armstrong, who got notice on very short order that I was going to be taking 3 weeks holidays, and she picked up the ball and she did a fine and admirable job. My very best wishes and thank you to Councillor Armstrong. So the next item is under administration. It's number 8A, and that is council key date calendar to be introduced by Ms. Sheila Gurry.
Thank you, Worship. So this was brought before council at the last committee of the whole for any discussion that might have needed to take place, and there wasn't any at that time. So tonight it's just bringing forward for your adoption, and it's the 28 key date calendar for council meetings, public hearings, etc. Committee of the whole.
Moving by Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the additional appointment of the Regional District of Nanaimo Board is to be introduced by Ms. Sheila Gurry.
Thank you, Worship. This is a report to add an additional appointment to the Regional District of Nanaimo Board. This isn't the annual appointments that we will be bringing forward to council next month for the annual appointments that the Regional District of Nanaimo requires. This is because of the Municipal Affairs and Housing did a census and has now determined that the City of Nanaimo requires an additional director appointed to the Regional District of Nanaimo Board. So the purpose of this report is to have council appoint an additional member to the Regional District of Nanaimo Board and adjust the number of votes. That was the other requirement, that the number of votes needed to be adjusted as well. So that's in the report, and that is now up to council to determine.
So I wonder, before we get into the delegation that's going to speak to this, if I can ask you the question, and that is that we had a discussion at the RDN board about the weighting of the votes at the RDN board, and there was a motion put forward to the ministry to increase our delegation or value to $27.50. So is that still under consideration of the ministry?
Thank you, Worship. Through to you and the rest of council, that wasn't addressed in the correspondence which is attached to the report. So there was correspondence from the Regional District of Nanaimo, as well as the email correspondence from the ministry. So maybe, I'm not sure if Councillor Thorpe has some additional information that he could provide with respect to that.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. I think I can. Thank you, Ms. Gurry. So that request to the provincial government to retain our current number was submitted. It has not been responded to by the provincial government at this point. We don't know when it will be, but the feeling is it probably will not be responded to in time for the inaugural meeting of the new RDN board, which is November 14th, I believe.
Just so the general, thank you very much. Just so the general public is aware, the requirement to add additional members is due to, both for the City of Nanaimo and the City of Parksville, is due to population increase. All right, so we have a delegation. Mr. Don Bonner. You are the first one up, Mr. Bonner, and I will advise you that again that the watchword tonight is respect, and that we're happy to hear your delegation, but I will be very cautious about anything that would go towards being disrespectful, particularly to our staff.
And when have I ever? Thank you. Around this time each year, a report is generated by staff on appointments to the RDN. Today's report is not only the appointment of additional members, but I understand we will be appointing the entire board in December. In the past, the report referenced the policy on appointments to the RDN. For example, on October 24th, 2016, the corporate officer created and signed a report stating the following. Council policy on appointments to the Board of Directors of the Regional District of Nanaimo states the following. Council to review on a yearly basis the City's appointees to the Regional District of Nanaimo Board of Directors, and that the selection of members of Council shall be considered a combination of experience and voter confidence. Now, that policy is not listed on the City website, so I don't have a copy of the entire policy. However, this policy is referenced numerous times on different Council meetings. In addition to the policy of choosing who sits on the board, I would recommend that we also look at the record of attending RDN board meetings. After the article from the Nanaimo News titled Meet Nanaimo's $500 per hour counselor, we have noticed some changes on attendance of some counselors and not others. The average attendance since January 2015 for the board and CAL meetings is as follows. Councillor Hong at 95%, Councillor Thorpe at 92%, Councillor Beswick at 83%, Councillor Kipp at 81%, Councillor Yoakum at 65%. Councillor Fuller's appointment March 31st, 2017, and he's presently at 85%. We have had times since January 15th that we've had 4 missing board members and no alternate has been there to replace them. I need not remind Council and the citizen of Nanaimo that there are some significant financial issues that are voted on that affect our taxes at these meetings, and if we are missing 4 members, the citizens of Nanaimo are not fully representative and we have lost our majority vote. In fact, for 21 meetings, we have had 1 or more missing council members and no alternate was there to replace them. Of those meetings, 10 had 3 or more members missing. This is not a good situation and it's gotten worse. Since Councillor Brennan was denied appointment to the RDN board in March of this year, we have not had an alternate at the RDN meeting when a board member has been absent. Appointments to the RDN board by council policy are based on experience and voter confidence. Now, one could argue that the current appointments to the board have lost some of the voter confidence since they were elected in 2014, but we should have a better idea of that in October 2018. For today's meeting, I have the following questions and suggestions. Who made the decision to recommend to include Councillor Armstrong as the new appointee instead of Councillor Brennan, who has more experience and more votes, and therefore no precedent to appoint there is no precedent to appoint a by-election councillor over one who is elected in the general election? It would seem some liberties have been taken that should be of a political decision and not necessarily done by staff. Number 2, what is the policy and procedures regarding contacting the alternate so that they can attend a meeting when a standing board member will be absent? Whatever the policy is, it's not working now. 3, what is the policy regarding board members missing meetings? Is there a policy at all? And finally, my suggestion for council would be to appoint all members of council except Councillor Yoakum and have him as the alternate. He has more experience than Councillor Fuller and Councillor Armstrong. However, his attendance shows that he is not a good fit for the job. If I had an employee who showed up only 65% of the time,
Okay, Mr.
I would
Bonner.
not keep them as an
Okay,
employee.
Mr. Bonner, you're going too far here. Now, I do have a couple of answers to your questions. One is with respect to the alternate. There's many times when someone who will go down sick in the middle of the afternoon or the night before, and the alternates cannot change their previously made plans. It's not fair for somebody to be given upwards, and I remember it happening to me one day, 1,400 pages of an agenda. And I was being asked to join the meeting from the gallery. That's not fair.
I agree.
So, if the alternate advises that they're not available, then sometimes you have to give them that. The second one is with respect to attendance at meetings. There's many meetings out at the RDN, including committee work, of which we're all involved in committees. So for you to just simply take the board meetings in isolation, or the COW meetings and the board meetings in isolation from all of the work, that's not fair. The other thing is with respect to your comment directed towards staff. The fact is that nobody's made a decision here. And voter confidence can be interpreted 2 ways. One is total vote count, and 2, percentage of vote. So we're going to debate that tonight. Nobody's made any decision.
I know. My presentation is, this is what I think you should be doing.
Thank you.
Okay.
Did you have anything further?
No, that was it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Thank you, Mr. Bonner. Thank you for your presentation and the questions. The 80%, wow, I'm happy I turned up 80% of the time. because I'm quite a busy guy. And you understand, was that with reviewing the cow and the board attendance? Are you aware that the RDN cow, you bring all the stuff to the table, it comes to the table, we look at it for the 2-week period, and then that information comes back 2 weeks later. So if one of the councillors missed or couldn't attend because of what the mayor said or something, then they actually get about a 2-week period to get the review of the minutes from that cow meeting, and then we re-vote on the issues 2 weeks later. It's a really good process because we have over 2 weeks to assemble the information. And I know if I send the mayor out, and he went out for me before when he was councillor, and he would talk about stuff. Or I remember one time he got mad at me because he thought I was telling him to vote a certain way out there. And that's one of my concerns, is that we don't vote in a block out there. We take our choices and we pick and choose at them. So are we represented well even when there's a full council if 2 or 3 of the members are voting against 3 or 4 of the other members? It's actually a counterbalance, and it's counterintuitive to me to go out there when you talk tax dollars and vote against each other. So that's counterintuitive to me too. So when you make an analysis, the percentage is great. And like for me, making 80%, and what was the period you had of that? Was that our whole time?
Since January of 2015.
Okay, did it include my holidays when I took holidays off? Because I took off a lot of time in August, I usually do. I take off time. Did you consider my holidays and that I was sick a couple of days? No.
Well, I would imagine if
Remember
you
I
were
was
on
dealing
holiday.
with cancer in January, I took some time off? Do you think that's a problem?
No, I think the
I
problem
think-
is that we didn't have an alternate covering you.
Well, most of the time when I go out there, there's an alternate. A few times I haven't, but it's been short notice. But I appreciate it. But so the 80% is based on attendance of a monthly attendance because we get to review the information over a 2-week period. So I just wanted to make sure you understood how the RDN works. Thank you.
Councillor Fuller.
Through you to staff, has there ever been a situation where we have had to look at a by-election person being appointed to the RDN? I don't recall anything in over 20 years that I've been paying attention. The delegation was saying there's no precedence for it, so that might be why.
Ms.
Thank
Curry.
you, Worship. Through you to Councillor Fuller. Not that I'm aware of. I was in Legislative Services when Councillor Greaves was appointed to council at a by-election. But this is unprecedented as well, that an additional member is required at the Regional District of Nanaimo Board. So this is a unique circumstance. So I don't
So this
have
could
an answer.
actually set precedents.
Possibly.
Thank you.
No, this is completely different.
Yeah.
Completely different. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. All right. Is there someone prepared to move a motion?
I'll move the motion.
You'll move the motion that's been recommended?
Yes.
Thank you. And it's seconded. It's moved by Councillor Kipp and seconded by Councillor Hong. Discussion. Councillor Hong?
Thank you. I have nothing against Councillor Brennan or Councillor Armstrong, but the reason that I actually support this, I'm not even looking at staff's recommendations based on however it was calculated. I think this is a good experience for Councillor Armstrong. As a first-time councillor, to be able to be on the RDN, and again, I want to emphasize that this is a temporary position. We don't know when the provincial government's going to approve the removal of this seat when we increase from 2,500 to 2,700. So I think as a taster, this would be good for Councillor Armstrong, and that's the reason I'm supporting this. It has nothing to do with staff recommendation, but I think this would be good for Councillor Armstrong. And that's my personal opinion. But her opinion could be different from mine.
Thank you.
Like I said, have they even accepted the positions? Because usually we talk about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
I would just like to say that I believe Councillor Brennan should be the person when you look at record of or expertise in that area. So I would, if in fairness, I would like to be the alternate. I think I'm in a better position to go at a moment's notice than other people, and I'd be prepared to do that. So I would like to recommend that it be Councillor Brennan. Thank you.
Okay. Friendly amendment? Okay. So, well, actually, you would just be changing your the direction if you wish to do that.
Oh, well, then,
Withdraw.
she's withdrawing.
Withdrawing her name, so.
If she's withdrawing her name, then the motion is invalid.
Right.
Yes.
So I withdraw my motion from the
Okay.
floor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Bestwick?
Thank you. Given what we've just, with Councillor Armstrong withdrawing her nomination, then it's clearly a default, and that's fine. My question is, as a sitting member at the regional district, is that the municipal housing and whatever, through the census has determined that we need to add one more director because of our population. However, as we've learned through our deputy director at the regional district level, that we don't know what the outcome of their decision is going to be. And so it could alter what decision we make here tonight to add or not add, and then we do our inaugural for the 2018 year in December or whenever we do it at the RDN. So it almost seems to me that we're presupposing something without having all of the information that we need in order to make the decision to add a person or not add a person. Because we don't have that information. So it just seems a little bit odd and confusing to me that we would make an appointment and then they come back and say, oh, we're not moving it up to 2750. Because we don't know if they are or not. And we don't know when they're going to do that, if they're going to do it at all. So it seems a little bit putting the cart ahead of the horse to me. But that said, this is fine. I'll vote in favor of sending a new director out there, and we'll see how long it lasts, if it's necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. I would suggest that they intend to keep it at this number, at least until the general election. Ms. Samra, did you wish to add some advice on this?
Sorry, just my understanding how it is explained to us is that this is a temporary decision that the RDN has already decided it doesn't want to increase the total number, so they're adjusting your weighted vote as soon as it gets approved by the ministry.
But but the ministry is ordering us to do this.
Well, you have to do it until they adjudicate on the decision
Right.
point. So it could be for a month or any period of time.
Or as Vice Director or Vice Chair Thorpe suggests, it may not happen at all.
You mean they may not accept the vote and recommendation from the RDN to eliminate the position and simply modify the weighted votes? And we just asked because it's been difficult for staff to process this when we're hearing different information, yet nothing directly from them.
Well, the correspondence that I read is that according to legislative services, the head of legislative services at the RDN, we have to do this because we're being told to do it by the ministry. The ministry has not given us any indication whether they intend to change and accept our notion to stay at 2750. That could happen tomorrow, it could happen none at all. But at this particular point, what I do know is they're telling us you need to appoint another director. And I would suspect that Parksville is going through the same thing right now. Yeah. So that's what we're voting on here. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Thorpe?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think you and Ms. Samra are both correct. As it stands now, it is confusing, but we have basically been told that we need to increase our representation. My understanding is that Parksville has, in fact, already decided on their additional seat. And the regional district has written basically appealing, hoping that we would not have to increase the size of our board. But as it stands now, we have been directed to do so. And when the result of that appeal will be known is anybody's guess, or whether it will be successful is anybody's guess. So you're quite right. We have been told to do this.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. Yeah, my concern with this is we have in our regional district, we have about 150,000 people. We now have another 5 levels of government with the cities and the regional district, and then First Nations governments within that are provincial and federal. So my view on this was to reduce the number of directors at the regional district. It costs about, I think it's about a $13,000 to $14,000 wage for one person out there, and it's a $17 million budget, going to $24 million. And from my point of view is, if we vote differently out there and don't vote in a block, we're not facilitating the needs of our tax dollars. And just by increasing the number out there, we're just getting more politicians involved in 150,000 people governance. And we're all the same. There's not much difference in any of the communities. And so from my view, I'd really like to see the board size reduced out there. And then you could have a person with an alternate. Years ago, I used to be an alternate for a specific director. And then they changed it to, monthly the alternates go out. So from my perspective, this is just adding another politician to the mix. I'm not certain it needs it, especially on a $24 million budget. We got a $200 million budget here, and we have one more person making the voting makeup. And that's, for us, a $20 million budget, and we've got almost the same makeup as here. We spend money out there on transit plans that don't always meet with our transit plan. We've got a transit plan for each city going on and all that. So this governance level to me is beyond belief when we keep adding to it. I'm not in favor of adding to the regional district, but I'll vote in favor of this.
Thank you. So there's a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Who's not?
Yeah, sorry, Your Worship, thank you. No, Councillor Kipp has withdrawn his motion.
Withdrawn it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought it was done
been a
with
friendly
amendment.
amendment.
Okay, so we need a motion.
I move that we appoint Councillor Brennan to the RDN.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Councillor Hong, seconded by Councillor Kipp. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you there, Councillor Bennett. Next item, council appointment of director to Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is very much a procedural step. It's necessary to appoint a director to NEDC to allow us to complete the wind down of the corporation.
Moved by Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Hong. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, advisory committee minutes. Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Your Worship. So under the advisory committee minutes on the agenda, it says it's to be introduced by the old chairs. So as everybody's aware, at the last council meeting, we have appointed new chairs to the committee. But the reason for the old chairs being listed is because they were the chair in attendance at the time of these minutes. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Good work around. Thank you. So the first one is community planning, and that's to be introduced by Councillor Kipp.
Yes, I move the minutes of the Committee Planning and Development Committee meeting held on Tuesday, the June 20th, 2017 at 5 o'clock be accepted.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Hong. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next one. Community planning.
Oh, Community Planning again. I got to flip the page. I move the minutes of the Community Planning and Development Committee held on Tuesday, July 18th, 2017 at 5 o'clock.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Kipp, seconded by Councillor Hong. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The next one, Councillor Fuller.
Okay. Move the minutes of the Community Vitality Committee meeting held on Wednesday, 2017, September 6th at 4:30 p.m.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Moved by Councillor Hong. Thank you. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next one, Councillor Armstrong.
Move that the minutes of the Community Engagement Task Force, previously Community Engagement Committee, meeting held on Tuesday, the 14th of December 2017 at 5 p.m. be accepted.
Moved by Councillor Armstrong and seconded by Councillor Hong. Any errors or omissions? Councillor Fuller, do you wish to speak? Okay. You must have turned your button back on. Thank you. Call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next one, Councillor Armstrong.
I move that the minutes of the Community Engagement Task Force, previously Community Engagement Committee, meeting held on Thursday, the 29th of September 2017 at 5 p.m. be accepted.
Seconded by Councillor Hong. Thank you. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next one. We're on to the next item. 10A, Development Permit Application Number DP 1076 at 100 Gordon Street, to be introduced by Mr. Dale Lindsay, Director of Community Development. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. We'd actually like to, if it's okay with Council, introduce items 10A and 10B. They're both related to the development of 100 Gordon Street. And I'd like to, at this point, refer it over to Mr. Corson just to give you a brief introduction on both those files.
Thank you. Mr. Corson.
Great. Thank you, Your Worship. So just wanted to give you a little, probably remind the people at home where we're at with this project. So this is the hotel site next to the convention center. And last December, Council requested that we issue a RFP to find interested parties in the site. And through that, we had 6 different responses. And Council met with different groups and at the end decided to go with PEG Development. And as part of their due diligence, they've been working on their development permit drawings, which we have here, working on the hotel tax revitalization exemption, which we have here for you. They've also completed their environmental and geotechnical work. They've confirmed the project viability. They've actually increased the project from when they came in initially from 112 rooms to 155 rooms, from 6 stories to 9 stories. So we're seeing a much larger product here. And we've also worked with them on the parking arrangement for the convention center. So they've, as of after this council meeting, the due diligence will be complete and we'll be in a position to transfer the property to them. And very pleased to have Mr. Kevin Perry and Eric Peterson here from PEG Development, who are going to run through the project for you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Peterson and Mr. Perry, pardon me. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor, council members, and staff. Thanks for making some time for us to come in today. We've been back 4 or 5 times. We've kind of fallen in love with the town, and we're really excited to see this project start to happen. It's been probably close to a year since we first found out about the project becoming available and the site being primed for a new hotel development in Nanaimo. And as Bill mentioned, we've been able to revamp the. Where do I point? We've been able to revamp the project a little bit to, we think, more suitable, be more suitable for the town. Trying to get to our.
There we go. Oh.
There we go. And this is a rendering, I think, looking south towards the front entrance of the hotel, and some of the key features that we modified from the prototypical hotel to really open it up and to make it more suitable for the site. Some of the comments we received back after a cursory review was that we wanted to open the front end of the hotel off to make it a little more vibrant, a little more airy. So as you can see, we've got those 2. I think there will be 3. There'll be big, sort of industrial-looking garage doors that can open up, so you can you'll have access right into the lobby from the walkway. We'll have some patio seating out there. Also, we've widened and brought the walkway from the convention center to the entrance of the hotel. That'll make it a little more open and welcoming. There were some comments and questions about the design of the hotel. This is a prototypical Marriott Courtyard by Marriott project. You'll see projects like this. The one that we're opening in Prince George is the first of its kind in Canada. This will be not far behind there. But it is a prototypical design. We've had to modify that design to fit on the footprint of the site. So it's a little atypical, but we've got a few more stories on top of the as Bill mentioned. We've got a few more stories there to get a few more rooms, and I think it makes it look quite beautiful, and the proportions a little bit better. we've got to thank the artistic interpretations of our architect. These birds look kind of like angels, and that sunset I think is in the south, which will never happen in nature, but it's still very nice looking, I think. Okay, we can go on. So as Bill mentioned, we're from Utah. We're based in Provo, Utah, which is about 30 miles south of Salt Lake City. I actually grew up in Alberta, 30 miles south of Lethbridge on a big cattle ranch. So I always like to mention that when I get to our Canadian audiences. Though we've got 45 employees that we're all focused on hotel, apartment, and commercial development and operations. As we mentioned, Nanaimo will be the second courtyard project that we'll undertake in Canada. Our Prince George project is 175 rooms and is going to open in February, March. We'd love to have anybody up to take a look, kind of walk through. You will see a lot of design similarities. They didn't have nearly the site restrictions. We've got a few acres to work with up there, so the building's a little bit, quite a bit shorter and much bigger footprint. But you will see a lot of the similarities. Right now, we've completed more than $600 million worth of hotel, apartment, commercial development throughout the Intermountain West, and so we've got a really good track record in completing projects like this. Right now, we've got 6 hotels currently under construction, with more than 15 in our pipeline in our pre-development efforts. Nanaimo, of course, being one of those. This is kind of small typing. This is many of you have seen this. This is just a little bit of a track record of our company.
Do you work for our finance department?
I'm sorry?
That's what their slides look like too, so don't feel bad.
Oh yeah, all footnotes. 35. Nanaimo cost $35 million. We built $600 million. We can get you more details if you're interested, but this is kind of if you'd like a printout or a little more detail, this will give you a little more history. And as you can see, one thing that we're proud of is through the economic downturn, 2008, 9, 10, we didn't really slow down. We performed really well for our investors and for the municipalities where we worked. So that's something that we're really proud of. There wasn't any slowdown for us that time. Here's a little more detail on our project in Prince George, and this is the rendering of the property up there. So as you can see, there are some similarities in the design, but there were a lot of parallels to be taken from Nanaimo, or from Prince George to Nanaimo, and so that's why we think we're best suited for this project. We know we can perform and get this project done after some other failed attempts. Let's go next. So some of these things we already talked about, but I'll let Kevin. So I work in business development and in new development projects. Then Kevin will be the project manager here, and he's been working closely with Bill and some of the other staff to get to where we are.
So I'm Kevin Perry. I'm going to give just an update of where we are on the design of this project. As was mentioned, some things have changed since the initial meeting with the city. We believe very much so for the better. We brought it from 112 rooms to 155 rooms, and from 6 stories to 9 stories, which will make this a steel and concrete structure rather than a wood structure. And as Eric mentioned, just all around, it just proportionally looks better on the site. It fits much better with the small footprint. We tentatively have a hotel operator identified, O'Neill, and are working down that road. And we have submitted for our franchise application with Marriott, and that's going to their committee this month for approval, which we don't see any roadblocks with that. We've also established our full team of design consultants, our architect, our civil engineer, which is a local consultant, our landscape architect, and our civil engineer, landscape architect, and structural engineer, also from the island. I'm just going to jump into the development permit submission that we made and just point out a few design points that I think are relevant, just to kind of give you guys the update. So this is our development permit. Eric spoke to the rendering, again, 9 stories. And I think kind of the best part of this, what we've done really well is we've activated that street level to really create a connection between the conference center and the hotel. Our hope is to really open that whole front side of the building with those overhead doors, outdoor patio seating, and quite a bit of glazing to really allow people to enter into the hotel from off the street. We will have a bistro that's open to the public with restaurant and drink service, and just really activate that street corner, make it quite a bit more vibrant than initially was anticipated. Going to the floor plan here, I know that's also pretty small, but you can see that on that top left side, that would be the northwest corner where we have double doors leading out to the patio and overhead doors leading out to the patio, connecting to an interior lounge and bistro area. We also have a prominent portico share, which from some of the comments in the development advisory panel, we wanted to make that look quite a bit better, and I believe we've achieved that, and I'll just switch back to that rendering. We've made that much more prominent, kind of a focal point of this hotel, which ties it into that street level quite well. And then finally on this floor plan, we have a pool and a spa, which from what I understand, that's not very common in this community, in hotels in this community, so we're hoping that leads to a good draw for this hotel. And most importantly, we see this as a hotel to serve the needs of the convention center. We had a good opportunity to meet with Chuck. I'm not sure what Chuck's last name is, the general manager of the convention center. And we feel that this hotel will really allow them to drive more business for the convention center. They mentioned that this has been a really big problem for them to not be able to get the larger, maybe national conventions to be able to come to the city due to lack of hotel room space. And our intention is definitely to work closely with the convention center and be able to block out rooms for business for those conventions so that they can continue to drive that business and use this convention center to its full capabilities. Finally, on the design, I will skip to the landscape drawings, which should be right at the bottom. So what we're going to do landscape-wise, we're going to carry the same streetscape design. And on this site, frankly, there's not a lot of room for plants. We're using up pretty much the entire site. But we're going to carry the same streetscape that you see on all of the three other corners, the same pavers, the same trees. We'll have the portico share. And the biggest part of the landscape that really activates it, in this case the hardscape, is that patio area. That's a really critical and key factor to this development to make it work with the street level. It's not just a building and a wall that you'll walk past. It's something that will draw you in to experience this hotel, whether you're a guest staying overnight or you're just going in for a cup of coffee or appetizers. We feel that our landscape plan and our patio will really drive that business. As far as design goes or our project goes, we will open it up to any questions that you may have and are happy to address anything that you have.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your confidence in Nanaimo. The relook from 112 to 155, that's really exciting. We do have questions for you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, gentlemen, thank you very much for coming and giving us this update. This is, as far as I'm concerned, an extremely exciting project for Nanaimo. I'm just so pleased to see it moving ahead. Really like what you've shown us in terms of your design. I think it beats Prince George hands down, and I just can hardly wait. I like the patio concept. Really pleased to hear that you're working with the convention center. There's a synergy there that I think will really be a win-win. I guess the fact that it is a challenging site has presented some difficulties. But like I say, I really like what you've shown us so far. My question has to do with the expansion, and again, I'm personally very pleased that you've decided to go from 6 to 9 stories, increase the number of rooms. My question is, was that based on your market study of what the market could hold here in Nanaimo? And as a supplemental to that question, why 9 as opposed to 10 or 12? Was that based on your analysis of the market?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when we initially submitted for this RFP, we did have a market study, and it had some information that was maybe a little bit outdated. And so based on the old market study, we did our financial analysis and ran it at 112 rooms. Subsequently, we engaged CBRE to run a new analysis for us to see if we could maximize or get more rooms in this building. And we ran several scenarios with them for that market study. The number we landed on, just from a cost of construction standpoint, the higher you go in construction, it drives cost exponentially. It's not just adding cost per floor equally. Cost is driven up exponentially. And not just that, number of hotel rooms that we feel the market can bear without an unreasonable amount of risk. That's kind of how we landed at that 155 room number. Just with potentials of some other hotels coming online in the city, that seemed like the route that we still could get the returns that we needed to get, but allowed for maybe a little bit more risk on adding more rooms. So.
Good. Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hong.
Thank you, gentlemen, for presenting. Again, this is much more improvement, I guess, from when we saw this at the design advisory panel, and you took our recommendations and you moved it closer to that bluff to give you guys more frontage in the front, and I think that looks amazing. All in all, I think you guys have done an amazing job with it, and we did discuss movement on it from the design advisory panel standpoint, and we do support it, and if they needed the canopy support as well. But I see that you guys don't need that now that you guys moved it back a bit. So one other thing we recommend, I think we talked about the signs being more predominant. I don't know if you're going to notice, but that building is going to be able to be seen probably over the casino. So there's no signage from coming on the actual highway. So I don't know if you can stick another sign on the other side of the building, but
we're happy to.
That's something that you should look at.
If your signage, if the signage ordinances allow it, we're happy to have signage in multiple directions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beswick.
Thank you very much. The signage location, we don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now, but gentlemen, compliments. Thank you so much for choosing to submit an expression of interest to the City of Nanaimo when you did, along with several others, and to become the choice of this council. And I'm delighted that you've gone from wood to concrete as a result of the increase in rooms. I think that's extremely important. I'd love to hear that you're going to feature the animation at street level for experiential guests and otherwise, so that's terrific news. I hope I'm not premature in saying this is a bright, bright day for the City of Nanaimo. Bright, bright day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Semmer, did you have an answer to the question for Councillor Thorpe?
I did, and I wanted to...
I also have a question for you as well.
Oh, okay. So I'll answer Councillor Thorpe first. I just wanted to point out to Council that the first CBRE report took a look at the viability of the conference center, and it had said a 155-room hotel would be ideal, and it gave a number of different options on where it could be located, but again, that study said the best place is to have it at 100 Gordon Street. So this does build on the work that Council's been doing with the conference center and improving its operations, and so it's great, and it's really nice to see that work done a year and a half ago, as it moves along its path, comes to this fruition. So I'm just generally very pleased about that.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe, you had a question to staff? That's what I thought Ms. Sammer was responding to.
It was the CBRU report.
Okay. Thank you. Through you to staff, but don't you fellows leave. I'm a little concerned about this, about the not having a dedicated loading area and what it's going to look like to try to get loading up the side of that hill. Can you bring that slide up that shows
Can you go to the other slideshow? I'll specifically show you kind of what our idea is. So there are some very challenging slopes on
right.
this
So
site.
on Cameron Road there.
Yes.
So what I'm trying to ask ask staff here is, would we be required to put a commercial loading zone along that strip from there down to the end so that they can back trucks up in there? Those sorts of things. Because there's nothing worse than you folks trying to carry on business and us out there with our bylaw guys giving you a ticket because they're double parked.
Yeah.
Because we didn't think of this. Ms. Sammer. Okay.
Okay, sorry. So we've been working with PEG on this. We're looking at a couple options. We met with the convention center folks today. We talked about actually using the convention center garbage area to actually store their garbage there. So it would just be one across. And Kevin might be able to speak a bit more on it. But they're also looking at another option of using another container they can bring on site. So we've been able to knock that off, actually. So it's all good.
Okay, great. Thank you.
If I might add, when people think of these hotels, they may have in mind like a much bigger hotel requires a lot more logistical coordination. But with these, they call them limited service because there's no. It's a limited service property. All of our laundry is done on site. Staff is responsible for their own uniforms. So really, you've got maybe two, 3 trucks a week that are showing up to help do sometimes the mats and some other supplies, some food and things like that. And the operators have really good scheduling procedures to make sure that they're coming when guests aren't coming. They're coming early, they're coming earlier in the morning, and they can go right to the front entrance there, take their 2 or 3 truckloads of fruits and vegetables in and be gone in 3 or 4 minutes. This isn't something where there's going to be big trucks backing in to take off loads and loads of laundry. It's all going to be managed on site. So the loading and unloading is going to be mitigated.
And I'll add one thing to that. So we're not planning to do loading off of Gordon Street. We do have a ramp. If you notice, it's against the cliff on the east side. It's not possible to back a truck into that due to the slope. However, we're trying to keep loading happening off of Cameron Road, where there's really not heavy traffic on Cameron Road. It's a dead end up to the military museum. So loading would be coming off of Cameron Road and then hand carted in on that ramp that's on the east side of the property. So we are trying to mitigate impact on main thoroughfares by doing as much as we can off of Cameron Road.
Great, thank you. Just supplemental, so that means that what you had labeled as garbage area is not. It's going to go, as Ms. Gorson suggests, may well go to the conference center.
Potentially.
Yeah.
That's we are in conversations with the conference center and trying to determine that. The conference center is open to that idea. Our preference is to try to keep garbage on site if possible, and we're working with our civil engineer with some of the slope issues to do everything we can to keep it on site. It's much easier from an operations standpoint to do so. That's very much our preference.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kipp.
Thank you very much. It's so nice to see something developing on this property. I appreciate the fact that you're coming here from the United States to invest in our community. Much appreciated. Will you be designing any rooms in this like some of the new hotels with a really small room? Sort of, I'm going to say youth hotels are coming out now. Some of the new ones in New York are
the Moxie.
Yeah. What's that?
The Moxie.
The Moxies and those types of things, or the Yotel.
It's funny. We're working on a dual-branded property in Scottsdale right now. Really, really nice part of town, kind of the old town Scottsdale. And they've specifically said no Moxie. So we're trying to sell people on the idea that a lot of people don't want to spend a lot of time in their hotel room. Moxies are a lot cheaper to build. They've got there is some appeal in the right scenario. But no, these are going to be full-size hotel rooms and suites, 400, 500, 600 square feet, depending on depending on the room. So these are going to be what you're used to from a 20-year-old Courtyard brand, full-size couch, desk, seating area, fold-out couch, and full-size bed. This isn't meant to be a millennial. That's what Moxie is trying to be, right? They're trying to get all these guys Kevin's age to stay there. So this will be a full size hotel room, hotel suite.
Follow up, I appreciate the articulation of the building. It looks good. I've stayed a few of Marriott's. Klaipėda is the exact building in Lithuania, the exact same building, but that's a nice looking building. I think it'll suit our purposes, especially with 155 rooms to help with the convention center. It's been a while coming. Appreciate the work you've done.
Thank you. I just want to point out one last thing. I know that there's sometimes a lot of heartburn around tax incentives and the town foregoing some tax revenue to get these properties done. But I can just tell you with a strong level of confidence, we look at dozens of these properties a month. And without a tax incentive, this project would not have got done. Without parking being supplied, this project would not have got done. An underground parking stall costs about $60,000, $70,000. An above ground parking stall costs $40,000 or $50,000. If you've got to provide 120 of those, it just makes it impossible for the project to be completed. So that's something that you can sleep easy on. It's something that made the project possible and is going to open a lot of doors. One thing we like to emphasize is when a new project like this comes in, we're not all about stealing business from existing hotels. There is some of that, sure, but it's creating a bigger pool. It's creating a bigger demand, creating a bigger pie, not just taking a piece of that pie. So the study that the conference center had done reported that there were 8 conventions missed in that year because of lack of housing alongside the convention center. There's going to be 80,000 people a year coming into this hotel, eating in the restaurants, shopping in the stores, renting cars, things like that. This is hopefully going to be a big economic boost to the area and a beautiful addition. One thing we also like to emphasize is there's going to be 30 full-time equivalent jobs, they call it, created. And these are great jobs. There's going to be 15 to 20 of them full-time with another 20 to 30 maybe part-time. And these are jobs with the Marriott brand, with the large international hotel operator. If somebody wants to come in and work in housekeeping, work in engineering, move up, transfer to another Marriott, it becomes a real possibility. So it's something in these smaller towns that we're really proud of, and it's something that I think the citizens can have to look forward to. In addition to the taxes, sales tax, occupancy tax, and the property tax that will be coming in for the next 100 years on the property. So.
One last speaker for you. Question from Councillor Fuller.
Not so much a question. I really appreciate what you're doing. I'm glad we went through the process we did because we had a lot of good projects come before us, and this one stands out. I'm skeptical as to how much impact it's going to have on the convention center. I've always been skeptical about convention centers, but the one thing I'm not skeptical about is Nanaimo. And Nanaimo needs those rooms because once people come here and if they do go to conventions, they're going to see what a beautiful city it is. And the potential, we're hoping to have a waterfront walkway extend from Departure Bay to the estuary, a huge benefit to the community, and this will be a benefit too. So hopefully your rooms are filled. I don't know if you know the history of this, but I'm kind of glad you're only going to 9 stories. At one time, the Council of the Dale, we were going to allow them 37 stories. Condos and hotel rooms. You got to love it.
We heard a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Good luck finding a bank that will give you a construction loan.
Exactly.
This is all based on pretty sound economics, the demand in the city, And about the convention center, my very first project out of college, 10 years ago, was the Anaheim Convention Center Hilton. It was a big condo conversion, 1,600 rooms. And I got into learning. I learned a lot about convention centers and the economics and how they drive it. And in a market like this, in a town like this, in Nanaimo, people are going to come for a convention, and then they're going to come back. And Nanaimo is going to be on the map to them now, and it's going to become a viable destination for them because they're familiar with the town, they know how to get here, they know where to stay, and it'll be. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised in 5 years.
Well, I'm sure I will, one way or the other.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We've finally exhausted the questions.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Very much appreciate it. So there's two motions required under number 10A and 10B. Do we have someone to move and second the 10A? 10A.
Move 10A. Second.
Seconded by Councillor Kipp. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Move 10B.
10B has been moved. Seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Worship, before you move on.
Ms. Brennan.
Okay.
Councillor Brennan.
Yeah. I just wanted to recognize the hard work and the creativity and diligence of our staff, and in particular, Mr. Lindsay and Mr. Corson. I think that I want to thank them for getting us to this key point, and because what's happened is it will be good for the hotel. I'm happy to think that it will do a lot to revitalize our downtown, and it will make the VICC the economic driver that we have always thought it could be, given the right circumstances. I think right now we have the right circumstances, so I want to thank you for the hard work and creativity that this took.
Thank you very much, and I certainly echo that. Congratulations, gentlemen. Thank you very much. All right. Next one. Waterfront Walkway Draft Plan, to be introduced by Mr. Dale Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Once again, this evening I'm going to quickly turn it over to Mr. Corson. We have a presentation that Bill and Mr. Corson and his team have prepared for you, so we'd like to walk you through the project and the work that they've been up to for the past number of months.
Thank you. Mr. Corson.
I'm just going to grab the remote control. Yeah, so we're very pleased tonight to present the draft waterfront walkway plan to you. I think as Council's certainly aware of, the community's probably aware of this too. This is one of the key projects in the strategic plan. And in the, I guess it was last fall, Council gave us direction to move forward with preparing this plan, as well as to work on projects that would actually help act as a catalyst to get things going. So what I'm going to do tonight is take you through, give you an overview of the project, and I'm going to talk to you about some of the projects we have lined up for 2018 and 2019 as well. I just want to emphasize the plan right now is in draft format, so there's definitely a few edits we're going to be making to it as staff, but we wanted to get it to Council at this point for you to have a look at. So I'm just going to give you a little overview of the project. We've done a lot of community engagement on this project, and it's involved a lot of staff from the city. We've all enjoyed going out there and talking about this project. We've prepared a draft alignment and routing. We have an implementation plan, which will show you how you can move forward with this project over a 10-year period, and then we'll update you on what we can do to move forward quickly. So the vision that Council has established is to create a continuous walkway from Departure Bay to the Nanaimo Estuary, and that would be over 13 kilometers in length. Right now, about 4.5 kilometers of it is built, and there's gaps in various places. Until now, we've been building the walkway really without an overall game plan in mind. So this is, now we're actually going to have a document that shows us where we should be investing and in what order. So the goals of the project are to create this continuous walkway, and it's accessible for people with mobility challenges as well as cyclists and pedestrians. One of the key things that came out of this was we want to make sure the walkway doesn't impact business, and we actually respect the working waterfront, and that we use the walkway to create a tourism and recreational destination. Another big issue was corridors, so people can view the waterfront from different places, and the environment is obviously a very key item to this. So when we hired a consultant team in March to get started on this, the first thing we did was review the list of supporting policy documents, which you can see on the right. There's many, many plans in the city refer to the waterfront walkway in various forms. There's also been previous plans of the walkway done, so we provided those to the consultant team. And then we carried these overall environmental and geotechnical studies as well as an archaeological. And at the same time, we went out and started meeting with key stakeholders to get their input on the project. So we started doing all that in March and April. And really before we got into any ideas of what this could look like, we wanted to get out to the community and have the community give us feedback. So this was a really important part of the project. And so we had 5 open houses, lots of people in attendance. For those council members that were there, you know how busy those meetings were. We've done 2 surveys. We got an amazing amount of feedback from people. And we also held a design workshop to kind of roll up our sleeves and get into it. So the first set of open houses were in May, and we had 3 there. And we had our survey established, which asked people to give us an idea as to what their preferences were, which sections they wanted to see built first, did they support the project at all, what sort of amenities they'd like to see. And that was all really useful information. In terms of the survey, you know, as planners, we kind of normally expect maybe 50 to 60 responses to a survey. So when we closed it and we had 1,900 responses, we were a bit overwhelmed, but that was much appreciated. So just some of the key findings from the first survey that was done in May. We asked people which sections they wanted to see developed first. And so the Departure Bay to BC Ferries section was the number 1 priority, as well as number 2 is BC Ferries to Millstone River. So we've kind of taken that to mean, you know, the real first initial area of investment should be from downtown to Departure Bay, and then we'll work south after that. Another important bit of input we got from people was, do you want to see new sections built first, or do you want us to upgrade areas that maybe aren't functioning that well at the moment? And the response was, you should keep extending it first. And then we had other key themes that came out. Washrooms are really important. We heard that in all the open houses. Parking, places for people to sit, places for people to have an ice cream or a coffee. Those are all important things people identified. We had a design workshop in June, and we kind of worked through 6 sections. So people spent their time going through each section and gave their input as to what it could look like. Our consultant team then took that information over the summer and worked on a draft alignment, which we presented in September. And again, we got more feedback. Another 700 responses this time, so still a huge response. And so again, kind of similar feedback. People really do want to see the section 1 done, which is the Departure Bay to BC Ferries section done. And in that, we gave people some options, either an elevated walkway or an at grade. And there was a larger preference to an elevated boardwalk. And we haven't made a decision on that. We're still presenting both of those to council right now. So I'm just going to take you through the alignment and route. I'll take you from north to south, from Departure Bay down to the estuary. And I'm not going to read off all the considerations and issues, but basically the colors you see at the top are timing. So the red color denotes a project that would happen sooner. Blue is longer distance off in the time horizon, and yellow is kind of medium distance. So as you're aware, we've updated the Departure Bay section last year for about $1 million and where people park at the moment. And the BC Ferries section is built behind BC Ferries. So what we're looking at doing is building a section from the end of BC Ferries to the first part of Solaire in the near future, and then working on the next section to Departure Bay. So the Newcastle Channel section is probably one of the most complicated sections. It's an area where the entire waterfront is either under jurisdiction of the Port Authority or the province, and the walkway has to be built by the tenants in cooperation with their landlord. And our goal here is to work with the NPA, the province, and the tenants to fill these gaps, because at the moment there's only 3 spots missing in the entire walkway, and we could actually be completed. So we've met with the Port Authority recently, and we've certainly expressed our interest in working with them to fill those gaps. And in a very short period of time, we'd be in a position where you could walk from downtown to BC Ferries along the waterfront to an interim standard. And when we say interim, that's generally 2 to 3 meters, and then it can be expanded at a later date. Maffeo Sun Parks, we have the park plan that's been in process for a number of years. And my understanding is they're close to bringing it back for council approval. And what we want to do is just make sure that that park plan addresses the waterfront walkway and brings in the feedback we've got through this process. We're also looking at bikes in this section, which would come through the park, but then be diverted up Front Street for commuter cyclists. And then the downtown section from basically from Maffeo Sun to the Gabriel Ferry Terminal, most of the walkway is there. There's one section missing across from Port Place Mall. And that's a section that, again, if we work with the Port Authority, we can complete that section in the near future, as well as work with BC Ferries as they redevelop their ferry terminal to get across their property. The South Downtown Waterfront area, so we're looking at next year completing an interim access road through the property, and that would provide the walkway in that section, as well as an interim route through the South End neighborhood until a new secondary access is decided upon. And then the last part is the South End, which is an area that I don't think in the past we put a lot of thought to, and I think now we've got a better idea of how this can actually happen. So coming down Halliburton Street, avoiding Cinema Reserve and Coastland, so that we're away from the industrial operations, coming down to the railway track, doing a rail trail section there, and then crossing over the Chase River. There'd be a bridge there, crossing over Rexford Creek, and then coming back behind Living Forest Campground to what we call the Wheel, to end the trail, that section. So in terms of implementation, this is kind of our draft plan. So you can see the areas we're looking at hopefully doing in 2018 and 2019. And then we have the 2020-21 section, 2022-2024, and then finishing it off. So some of the projects on here are actually cost share projects where we partner with developers, and or we've already got funding allocated towards it. So those are the stars. And some we'd hope that would actually be built by the developers themselves. So one of the things Council asked us to do last year was to identify what we called the quick wins, which were projects that we could do over the next 2 years. And we tested these projects with the public to see which of the 5 projects they'd be most interested in. When we brought these to Council, we assumed you would pick 1 or 2 of them, but you picked all 5. So we're trying to deliver all 5 for you. And I'm just going to take you through what those projects are so you can see what we're working on right now. So this is the, we call the BC Ferries to White Eagle section. So this is, in our staff report, you'll see a request for funding for detailed design work. So that's to get the design work going on this section so we can tender this next year, hopefully. These are the gaps along the Newcastle Channel where you need to work with the Port Authority just to finish these last little pieces. And the costs will really vary as to the level of cooperation we get from the tenants and the Port Authority. This is we call this a shipyard detour because right now the shipyard site's being used as an active shipyard, so we know we need to go around it in the interim. In the long term, the walkway will go in front of it. But what we'd like to do is right now when people get to Cypress Street, they tend to turn around and go back. We'd like to improve the signage, improve the street markings so that it's very clear for people that if they take the detour, they're going to be back on the waterfront and all the way to BC Ferries. In this project, we have to do a culvert replacement project in 2019, so we're going to combine the two projects together then. This is the boat basin section where we have funding in place through an amended contribution from Port Place Mall to reduce the overall cost, but that would finish off the walkway in the downtown core. And then Port Drive. So we're looking at building the interim road next year, and as part of that design work, we've had the consultant include an interim walkway in there, so that's been included in the capital plan for next year. In terms of next steps, so we've asked to refer the draft plan just to get some final feedback. I'd like to get some more feedback from if we're going to have the document up on the website for a few weeks for people to give us their comments. Then we'd like to come back to council with the final changes. And regardless, we're kind of off and running on the design work for these projects, and you'll see them included in the capital plan for next year. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan. Okay, thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. Through to the staff, much appreciated. I think senior staff has brought this forward, and it is excellent. What about climate adaptation with this trail? Have you spent much time on it? Community resilience. I mean, it's our waterfront. I look at coastal hazard concepts on how we protect our waterfront over rising water or big storms. So have we spent any time on looking at that, whether there's the ability for water capture on overflow or ponding, similar to ideas like the Swilana Lagoon that have water features along the way? Have we looked at any of that or any concepts for climate adaptation?
In terms of the elevated boardwalk, we've looked at making sure we're at the 100-year mark out so that we don't have to raise it 50 years out. Along the, I think maybe Mr. Lindsay can speak to this. I know we're working on our climate adaptation strategy, which I think we'll be rolling into One Port Drive and kind of the rest of the waterfront. So
it's on your...
It's on our radar.
It's on the radar.
Yeah.
But distant on the radar is what I'm reading.
We know it's on the radar.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate the work that's being done. It would be a phenomenal trail. 13 kilometers long would be excellent. That would be an asset for Nanaimo that would be well into the future. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the report. And being certainly one of our strategic plan priorities from early on in this council. It was the waterfront walkway enhancements, improvements, extensions, and connectivities. My question is, you're asking us in the motion recommendation to take this to the Parks and Rec and Wellness, to the Public Works and Engineering, and Community Planning and Development, along with a contribution for an additional consultant work on plans and engineering and things. The final changes, so provide public with opportunity to comment. So we're going to take it to those three committees. Then we're going to provide the public with an opportunity to comment, the draft plan. And then we're going to come back for final changes and return to council for approval in January of 2018. And I'm sure hopeful that you can come back for approval in January of 2018. Is that realistic?
I mean, from a staff perspective, I think we do have a few tweaks we need to make to it. I'm not too sure what the committee schedule is. And in terms of the public, we can, it's up on the website now for people to provide feedback on. So
I'm hopeful. It just seems extremely ambitious to me to put a date of sometime January 2018, knowing that there's Christmas and knowing that there's whatever.
my original date was December, so I backed off.
So you're assuring me that we can have this done by January 2018 then? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, is there someone prepared to move the recommendation? Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Councillor Hong. Motion.
Thank you. I kind of have the same concerns that Councillor Bestwick had. If we're going to get this proceeded, is there any way we could amend it that we don't have to really wait for these committees? Because if I'm not mistaken, Public Works and Engineering Committee has changed its meeting schedule. So if I'm not mistaken, I don't think they're ever going to get this implementation plan before January. Yeah. It's changed to quarterly. So I'm just have a concern if we're going to try to get this started and we're going to get this tendered. How important is it to get it to these committees in time to proceed forward? Okay. Is there an amendment that we can do?
So our clerk wishes to speak to that. Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Hong is correct. So the Public Works and Engineering Committee is on a hiatus until the hiring of the new Director of Public Works and Engineering and won't be meeting until January. So this should have been communicated with Mr. Corson and Mr. Lindsay. So I would maybe suggest amending the motion to exclude that committee from going to it.
The movers and seconders, are they okay with the friendly amendment? Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. Councillor Armstrong.
I was just going to say the same thing. Was there any need to consult with those committees? And because we heard earlier that no, there wasn't. So,
thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. I'm just nervous about telling people that we're going to go and consult with them, Public Works or Parks and Rec, and then we don't get there for whatever reason, unintended consequences, and things just happen, and then we're caught by, well, we said we were going to, but we didn't, and somebody wants to take issue with that. So I get that there's been a friendly amendment, but is there any reason why we could not have a designated open house for 2 weeks, and the Parks, Recreation and Wellness Committee members are invited, the community planning people are invited, the Public Works people are invited, everybody's invited to come and join us for this storyboard presentation. Everybody gets the same information all at once that want to attend, that can attend, more than one option. Come, we'll set up 3 of them, 2 of them. And because if we're saying that we want this amount of consultation with the committees, and we know that they don't typically meet the same weeks, so they don't. So there's going to be time over time over time it's going to take. And then we're going to go to the community. I get that they can respond online, but that's not what we're saying. We're saying we're going to provide public with opportunity to comment to the draft plan on the website, but there's going to be new information. There's going to be more information than we've already got. So if we're going to run with this thing, then let's run with this thing. Let's invite all 3 committees to the same place at the same time and give them one of these education seminars and ask as many questions as you want, and the public can come too, because the public's invited to all those meetings if they want to come too. So, and I'm not trying to hurry anything up. I'm not trying to slide anything through a loophole or, divert a process. If we want to do this starting in January 2018, let's, and you backed it up a month. Well, good. Let's go. Let's go. You've already got 1,900 comments plus 700 more, 2,600 people have, or I don't know if they're all unique comments, but unique individuals. I'm sure they're all unique in their own way. And we've got 2,600 people that have already commented on this. I don't know how many more we need. So let's go.
Ms. Curry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one further comment to what Councillor Bestwick is speaking to. There's also quite a useful tool to combine committee meetings together. So we could have the Parks, Recreation and Wellness Committee meet together with the Community Planning and Development Committee. As well, we can always schedule special committee meetings. So on a not scheduled meeting date, call a special committee meeting. So there's opportunities to get this done if the need be.
Thank you. Can we leave it with you? Ms. Lindsay.
Your Worship, I just wanted to make, and I was going to say exactly what Ms. Gurry said, that we'll work together with Legislative Services to find a date that works for the committees. We're much like Council. We want to move this forward as quickly as possible. What I would say, though, on the community and completing that section of community engagement, we've been pretty open with the community throughout this process that we wanted to hear from them and we wanted to take their ideas, and that we committed we were going to do a draft plan. And once we had a draft plan, as you would in any normal planning process, we'll share that draft plan back out with you and tell us, did we get it right or not? So I think this important step we're taking about posting it on the website and giving people to look at the document and provide us their comments is something that we've committed to people. I don't want to give the impression that we had quite an extensive public engagement session that Mr. Corson led throughout the summer. We're not doing that again, but I think we do have an obligation to share with the community the draft plan that we've come forward with.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to belabor this. I agree with the speakers in terms of wanting to move this forward as quickly as possible. It's a very exciting project, and it's one we're all looking forward to. I do think that there is some degree of need to share this information with the concerned committees. And maybe the word consult is the wrong word to use. We've had an awful lot of public consultation on this, as we've heard. But I think it would be wise and appropriate to share with at least the two committees what we've come up with to this point and the work that's been done by city staff. Maybe not so much to gather more information, but simply to keep them apprised of where we're at. And I can certainly see combining those two committees and inviting the public to come as well, as Councillor Bestwick was suggesting, as a type of open house format, and do it all at once and be done with it. But I think it would be great information to pass along. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. I agree. I agree to an extent, but I think that that best practices when you're doing community development is to consult, to produce and show, and then to go back and say, did we get it right? Is this what you meant? And I think that have we got it right? Is this what you meant? Piece has to be followed. I get that we can do it maybe in a shortened form than we had originally thought, because I think there is a lot of agreement on this, and that it wouldn't be a particularly, there wouldn't be a lot of conflict around it. But I think in terms of doing it the best we can, always to develop the plan and then go back and say, is this it, is really the best practice that we can do. And if we can find a way to, is the word truncate that, then we should do it. But I don't think we should miss it altogether.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
Thank you. Just want to say I really appreciate the work that all of staff, Ms. Samra, Bill, Dale, and the other staff members that have worked on this have put into this. We do want it to go forward. No one is saying not to show it and get public input again. It's how quickly can we get it to the committees and then get it back to the public. And I'm hearing from Mr. Lindsay that that can be done and done relatively quickly. So I think we may actually meet that January deadline.
Maybe December.
Thank you. Maybe December.
Thank you. So the motion as amended has been moved and seconded. Call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, appointment of a business license inspector to be introduced by Mr. Lindsay. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. We've recently replaced our manager of our business license section, and as a result, we're here this evening asking Council to appoint Ms. Heidi Davidson as the business license inspector under the bylaw.
Okay, it's been moved by Councillor Bestwick and seconded by Councillor Hong. Discussion? Seeing none, call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is remedial action order on 1583 Bartlett Street, and it's to be introduced by Mr. Dale Lindsay, Director of Community Development. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you mentioned, this remedial action order is related to the property at 1583 Bartlett Street. I would note that previously this item had been before Council in September of this year, and at that time it was moved by Council that it be deferred for 30 days. Obviously, those 30 days have now passed, and we're bringing it back seeking Council's direction.
Thank you very much. So we have a delegation wishing to speak to this item. That's Mr. Gill. Mr. Gill, you're welcome to come to the podium. Good evening, Mr. Gill. Can I have your name and address for the record,
Hello,
please?
good evening, everybody. My name is Gurdev S. Gill. I am the owner of the residential house on 1583 Bartlett Street. I have written a letter to all the honorable city council member and also to our honorable Mr. Bill McKay. As I have mentioned in my letter that I had suffered head stroke and I was hospitalized for 2 weeks in Remo General Hospital. I suffered loss of memory and loss of hearing aid. I am on hearing aid right now, which I don't hear properly. And also I lost my vision due to this, the head stroke I suffered. So I am not really afraid to come here to the meeting, but I have to attend because of my house was in the agenda and they want me to remove the roof that I built above the stairs outside the house. Okay, now I would like to tell all the honorable city council members that I need your support. The reason I built this roof above the stairs because I have 2 lady tenants previously lived in the house because we have a heavy rain every year in Nanaimo, and most of these days are heavy rain and people going up and down on the stairs, they slip and fall down. I had 2 ladies who fell down on the stairs. The first lady, she fell down on the slippery stairs and she sprained her ankle and also she hit her chin on one of the steps and she got bleeding in her mouth. And the second lady fell on the wet stairs and she suffered damage to her leg and had a cut on her knee, which is open injury. So what happened after that? I lost her for 2 years. I didn't rent the house for 2 years, but some people who are homeless, they break the front door and enter the home illegally and start sleeping there. And they made the damage to the house and also they damaged my fridge and stove. Then I decided to fix the house again. I able to manage to kick them out of the house with the help of the police. And then I decided to fix the house again and try to rent it. Then it was in my mind that next people comes in there, their issue will be sleeping from the stairs. And there are about 9 steps when you go up the landing to the house. So I put this roof above the stairs just for the whole safety of my tenant. especially for ladies, because it is kind of difficult to get up and down the stairs when it is raining. So I appeal to all of you that I want to keep this roof. So please support me to leave the roof in place. The current tenant living there right now, he asked me to appeal to the honorable city council member that this is the thing, that he also needs the roof on the stairs because he is fond of smoking and he sit outside under the roof and he smoke. And I said, okay, I will do that. And the second thing, there's a complaint from the post office lady. She was delivering mail. She told me that she managed to control herself and she slept on the wet stairs. And then she stopped delivering mail when it is raining. So that's all my concern. And I would like to tell you that this roof was built very properly because I had experienced carpenter who put the roof properly, and it was screwed and bolted. And also I have a drawing here that, and it was supported with the 2x6 arm, so that way it won't fall down during rain or during heavy rain and heavy wind. And also I would like to tell the city council member that I'm also a carpenter by trade and I'm a developer. I lately developed 12 years townhouses on Hackett Street in the year 1999. And now, in the next coming couple of years, I am developing another 12 units townhouses on number 50 Irvin Street, which is in the corner of Irvin and Miller, behind the pub on Halliburton. I have a half an acre lot sitting there, so I will be developing another 12 units in the next coming few years, and I am bringing more business to Nanaimo. And regarding this house on 1583 Bartlett Street, this house is old, 60 years old, and most of the wood is rotten. I might, in the couple of years, I might demolish this house and then put a fourplex in there because I have a zoning in place.
Thank you, sir. Your time is up. So I need to ask staff. The report here today is for remedial action. Supposedly, the reason that this came to us originally, Mr. Lindsay, is because of construction without a building permit.
Well, that's correct, Your Worship. The building was built without a building permit, and it's not in compliance with the code. So at that time, we came to you in September because we were unsuccessful in getting the owners to make application and bring it into compliance. So one of the few options left to us is to pursue a remedial action in order to actually have the roof structure removed. So that's what we're here this evening, seeking that direction.
So if I could just to clarify, it looks as though the stairs were replaced at the same time and new railings put in. Am I correct in that, sir? Did you put stairs and new railing and roof all at the same time?
Sorry, I can't hear properly because...
Okay, did you put new stairs and railing in there at the same time you put the roof in? No?
Your Worship, my understanding is that the stairs, they may have been repaired, but there was obviously stairs to that front door previously. The remedial action order is not to do with the stairs or the landing, but specifically the roof structure.
Is there a way to bring it into conform?
There's certainly a way to put a covered porch over the front of the home that complies with the code requirements. I would suggest that it may look substantially different than what's in front of you this evening.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the delegation, Council? Councilor Brennan.
It sounds to me like you own several properties and that you are a developer to some degree. Is that correct? Do you own several properties that you rent out?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you properly.
You may
because
have to get
my
right up to
hearing
your
aid is not very strong.
Okay.
It was newly put on.
I'm just trying to determine whether you have the financial means to correct this. Are you telling me you don't have enough money to do the work?
Can I come closer to you?
Sure, I guess. Come. And read my lips too. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I've spent the weekend with two deaf people. Do you have the money to fix the roof? Can you do it?
Well, it is properly built, though. I don't think anything wrong with that.
The city says there is something wrong, and they want you to correct it.
I can do that.
You can do that?
Yes, no problem.
Okay.
As I told you, I am an experienced builder.
Okay.
I build houses. There's no problem
Thank-
fixing it.
Okay.
Thank you,
That's
sir.
all I know.
Thank
So
you.
now-
I know what's the problem.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you. You can go back to the podium.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's all my concern is.
Thank you. So I need you to go back there.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just want to save the roof just for the safety of my tenant.
I know that, and I want.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bill.
Yep, thank you.
Now I'd like to ask staff whether this order, if we passed it now, would there still be 30 days?
Sir, keep going.
I'd like to ask staff, if this was passed tonight as is, would there still be 30 days to correct it?
Your Worship, if this is passed tonight, there's two things that happen. First of all, under the legislation, there's the opportunity for a homeowner to appeal that initial direction of council, so they have a time frame in which to do that. But ultimately, our preference is not to proceed with any remedial action order. Our preference is for the owner themselves to address the issue. So that would be our hope.
But what do you mean when you say address the issue if it isn't
For
to
they themselves
correct it?
to remove the construction.
That's yes.
So if they
Well,
obviously did that or came in for a building permit for a structure that did comply, then we wouldn't need to proceed with the order.
Can you explain that to Mr. Gill? Is it Gill? Can you explain that to him?
Certainly, our staff have had, my understanding is, numerous conversations, but we can continue those even if council decides tonight to proceed with the order. Those discussions will continue.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
Yeah, this is another interesting one, but correct me if I'm wrong. If I was a tenant of that house and that roof collapsed on me, I could sue the crap out of the owner of the house, could I not? Now, if that house was built to code and I was a tenant and the roof collapsed for some weird reason, but it was built to code, I would be less likely to be able to sue the crap out of the person. So it's in his benefit to actually take this down and build it to code.
Your Worship, I'm not really in the best place to give legal advice here, but what I would say is generally it's always preferred for people to comply with building code when they're building any structures that they would expect to have the public in.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. I see this as protecting the city. We know about it. Now it's our responsibility to correct it. As we've seen from other experiences, it is always in the best interest of the homeowner to take it down, because if we do it, we know what the bills can look like. So, as a builder, he should know a building permit is required. So I feel sorry for him that he had a stroke and everything else, his hardships. I think we've given him enough time. I don't mind extending it for another 30 days for him to remove it, but that's about it. There's no way that this meets code. I can look at this and I can't see. Like, imagine how much snow we had last year pounding on this thing with the weight of it. So as an experienced builder, he should know better. So that's where I'm going to base my judgment on staff's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. So there's no further questions. Is someone prepared to move a recommendation or move something? Moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Bestwick. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, bylaw contravention notice, construction not completed as per conditions of building permit at 2717 Willow Grouse Crescent. It's to be introduced by Mr. Dale Lindsay. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. We're here this evening seeking direction of council for a notice on title on the subject property at 2717 Willow Grouse Crescent. Specifically, although there was a building permit obtained back in 2013 on this property, the work has not been completed in compliance with that permit, and we're now recommending a notice on title be registered.
Thank you. Before we do that, it's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to bylaw contravention notice at 2717 Willow Grouse Crescent. Is there anyone wishing to speak to that? For the second time, is requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to bylaw contravention notice at 2717 Willow Grouse Crescent. And for the third and final time. Seeing none, Councillor Bestwick. The recommendation?
Land Title and Survey Authority of British Columbia under Section 57 of the Community Charter for the property located at 2717 Willow Grouse.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The next one is bylaw contravention notice, construction without a permit at 660 2nd Street. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. This item is also seeking council's direction with respect to a notice on title. In this case, it's for work completed without the necessary permits or inspections.
Thank you. It's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to bylaw contravention notice at 660 2nd Street. For the second time, anyone wishing to speak to bylaw contravention notice at 660 2nd Street. And for the third and final time, seeing none, someone prepared to move a recommendation. Councillor Brennan, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? Councillor Bestwick.
Supporting the recommendation. I just, knowing that on the first one on Bartlett we had a photograph, it just helps not having to drive around town to all of the properties just to try to get a visual of what the, and if it's in the back, then I'm not going through somebody's yard to get into the back or whatever. But it would just be very helpful, I think, for all of us if we had photographs as provided for 1583 Bartlett that would at least give us that visual as we're making our decisions. Not a complaint, just it'd be nice if we had.
Mr. Lindsay.
I think I certainly hear Councillor Bestwick's comment. What I would say is a remedial action order is certainly a step above a notice on title because we're actually recommending someone to take action, where a notice on title is simply that, just a notice for future purchasers. The challenge that we have sometime with bringing you images is quite often the work is inside someone's home, and then at that point we get into issues of privacy and are we sharing images publicly that we're not in a position to share. But certainly if there's things on the outside of a building, if there's life safety issues, we can absolutely do that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item. Bylaw contravention notice. Construction started without a building permit at 913 Howard Avenue. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, this is a notice on title for the subject property for work completed without the necessary permits or inspections.
Thank you. It's requested the council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to bylaw contravention notice at 913 Howard Avenue. For the second time, 913 Howard Avenue. And for the third and final time. Seeing none.
Move staff's recommendation that council direct the corporate officer to file a bylaw contravention notice at Land Title and Survey Authority of British Columbia under Section 57 of the Community Charter for property located at 913 Howard Avenue.
Thank you, Councillor Bestwick. Is there a seconder? Councillor Kipp, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, Development Cost Charge Bylaw Introduction, to be introduced by Mr. Dale Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. This evening, we brought before you a bylaw for consideration of first and second reading for a new development cost charge bylaw. Of course, we've been in front of Council a number of times over the past few months, primarily through the Finance and Audit Committee. We originally were there in the spring, back in March, to introduce what we called at the time a draft framework for a new DCC bylaw. At that point, the committee, through and ultimately Council, directed us to go out to do public engagement. So we in addition to meeting with your committees in the month of June, we also held a public information in June. We held a number of stakeholder sessions and ultimately returned to the Finance and Audit Committee on August 10th. Through the feedback we received in the early part of the summer, we actually made some recommendations for amendments to that original framework. That was received and endorsed by Finance and Audit at your meeting on August 10th, and ultimately on September 11th, that Finance and Audit Committee's recommendation was endorsed by Council. Excuse me. So this bylaw is ultimately bringing forward that framework that had previously been discussed and outlined, and now we'll be proceeding if Council gives first and second reading. Although not legislatively required, we are recommending that it be included on an upcoming public hearing agenda so that anybody who wants to have any comments or additional input before Council considers adoption will have that opportunity. It also requires, as a DCC bylaw, is somewhat unique, and it requires approval of the inspector of municipality, so it will be referred to the province before final adoption. If the bylaw is adopted within the bylaw, we have a proposed implementation date of March 1st of 2018. And on the screen is the general outline of the process that the bylaw will go through.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
First.
No, we'll do them one at a time. Okay. So for the first one, it's been moved by Councillor Brennan and seconded by Councillor Bestwick. It's now on the floor. Any discussion? Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. Quickly, I just want to commend staff for the process that they undertook to come to these figures on the information in front of us. I think it was a very transparent process, lots of public consultation. I think best practice has been followed, and I think the result is very fair to all concerned. I also like the grace period and the fact that people have until March if they want to hurry and get their applications in. So I'll certainly support this.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. I only have one question. It's been some time since we've reviewed this bylaw, and I'm wondering, are we thinking of another 10-year period or before we would review this again, or is that something that is up for opportunity?
Your Worship, what I would say is I don't think a 10-year period is appropriate for DCC bylaw. I think more a 5-year is probably an appropriate time frame. And if I have anything to say about it in 5 years from now, we'll probably be back in front of you with an update to our DCC bylaw.
Thank you very much. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving second reading by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Hong. Councillor Bestwick.
Well, just to follow up Mr. Lindsay's comment, if he has anything to do with it in 5, if you don't have anything to do with it in 5 years, would you suggest that we should revisit the DCC bylaw in 5 years?
That would be my recommendation. We didn't include it here as a recommendation because I think it's difficult to fetter the direction of future councils, but I think best practices would be that you would review your DCC bylaw on a more regular basis, and 5 years seems to be sort of the industry standard, yes.
Thank you. And just as a follow-up, thank you. I appreciate the candid answer. If industry standard would be 5 years, and if you and your professional opinion believe that 10 years is too long, without hesitation, I would encourage this council to take it off the hands of the next council and put a motion forward that we do follow industry standard practices, as you've suggested, at 5 years. So I won't do that now, but I will bring that forward as a notice of motion in 2 weeks.
Is under Section 12, under bylaws, with no accompanying report. The first one, Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 6500.032. Is there someone prepared to move? Oh, pardon me, Councillor Brennan. Okay. Someone prepared to move the motion, please.
So moved.
Move the motion, thank
Zoning
you.
Amendment Bylaw 2016, number 4500.102. RA 288.
No, we're on the one before that.
Which? Right here?
Yeah,
Right here.
one above.
12A.
12A.
Well, that's what I'm reading.
032, you said 102. Did you not?
102, that's what mine's written.
Okay.
No, it is 032? Okay.
032.
Which one am I reading then? Okay, I'm not going to read them.
Councillor Brennan, are you prepared to read?
I tried to fill
12A.
them in, but I couldn't make it.
I've got,
Page 145.
go to page
One.
14.
Oh, God, it's hard to get good help. Yeah.
Okay,
032.
whereas,
032 was moved to A, sorry.
so therefore, do you want the whereases?
No.
too? Okay.
Just the motion.
Therefore be it resolved that the municipal council of the city of Nanaimo.
No.
No, it's page 145.
Okay. Motion that the Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw 2016, number 6500.032, to amend the designations of 2560 Bowen Road and parts of 2020 Labio Road, specifically 1900 and 2200 Labio Road, be adopted.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Kipp, seconded by Councillor Bestwick. Thank you very much. There is no discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Zoning Amendment Bylaw 4500.102. Councillor Brennan.
That zoning amendment bylaw 2016, number 41500.102, RA 288.
1500.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Brennan, it's just 4500.102. That's an error.
This says 41,500.
Yeah, it's wrong.
New bylaw.
It's hard to determine whether it's me that's wrong or the paper that's wrong or life itself is just all wrong. But, I'll go along with this. Motion that zoning amendment bylaw 2016 number 4500.102 to rezone 2560 Bowen Road 1900 and 2200 Labio Road from high-tech industrial I3 to community corridor CCR3 be adopted.
Thank you.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Kipp. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, highway closure and dedication removal. Lake Road and a portion of 102 Street or 102nd Street, bylaw number 2017, number 7246. And we have two delegations, the first one being Mr. David Murchie. Good evening, sir, and you have up to 10 minutes. And can we have your address? We've already got your name, address for the record, please.
My name's David Murchie, and at 2700 102nd Street in Nanaimo.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Council and staff. Again, staff was helpful whenever I had questions, and I really appreciate it. It makes things easier. My presentation, There we go. That's Sandy Beach along Loudon Walkway. So that's one of the reasons why I'm here. It's not just a trail, as sometimes it's referred to. It's actually the original beach area. So I just thought I'd put that up at the front there, and you can see a dock in the background that perhaps shouldn't be there. But so at the first presentation I made, it was strictly on procedure, and so I'm going to do a quick recap of that. The title of my presentation sort of shows what I was listening to what councillors said about wanting to clean up a mess, and so I tried to make that a theme later on. So quick recap. 3 weeks ago, I presented to you about Lake Road being a park. The process required for selling off parkland requires voter assent. I asked that this process be slowed down and referred to proper planning and to a proper process. I spoke to council about how Lake Road is all of a historical park, a common law park, a crown park, and a city-dedicated park. I have to read my notes here because I don't have glasses, so I can't even read the screen. I provided everyone present with a copy of the bylaw dedicating Lake Road in its entirety as a park. I provided evidence that this bylaw was well known and was held by the city as an example of a valid park dedication bylaw. Legislative Services advised it was a valid bylaw when asked. At no point did the public hear that Lake Road was not a park under the law. At no point was legal advice presented that Loudon Walkway should be handled differently from other parks. At no point did the public hear that the legally required processes for selling parkland must not or should not be followed for selling Loudon Walkway parkland. Councillor Bestwick, I believe, asked staff if really a dedicated park by bylaw. Staff advised they'd gotten a legal opinion for council. On a legal technicality, staff were recommending council ignore the bylaw and implicitly the provincial laws relating to parks. My presentation was to request council respect the bylaw, respect the park, and respect the provincial law surrounding parkland. So, councillors, I was quite pleased they had some discussion regarding the first and second reading, and the three main themes were encroachments, fencing concerns, and to clean up the historical mess. And in 10 minutes, I sort of barely have time just to hit on those, so I'm going to try and move quick. Encroachment for this strip of land has been addressed in the past. A land exchange fixed for primary structure encroachment and encroachment agreements for landscaping encroachments. This was a previous bylaw of city to deal with the structural encroachment. As you can see, it's a land swap. The amount of area in the two areas is identical. So they took away the little less useful point, and they made it so that the building fit into the property. It was a road closure bylaw. It's all dedicated park. It was quite clean for the landowner and for the city. I'm going to skip ahead there. So all but one property along here has been purchased after 1985, most in the last 10 to 15 years. Staff was directed to the Loudon Park plan to get encroachment agreements. Selling land was not part of the Loudon Park plan. So as you can see, all of those properties along there, except for the one on the far left, 4288, all of them, I mean, they're close, but lack of setback isn't an encroachment. And that 4288, that's actually the property that's on the previous slide where we already adjusted it once. I say we as the city and the community. And you can see, okay, depending on how accurate this is, they're encroaching again. I mean, sort of shows you make an adaptation and then problems sometimes reoccur. Land exchange is the best solution. It's the best option to deal with real encroachments. The amount of land affected is very small along Loudon Walkway, as can be seen from the previous map. Selling 1/3 of an acre is not a reasonable solution to minuscule building encroachments. Just to give you an idea of how much land we're talking about selling here, it's bigger than the provincial park at the point that you're leasing. So we're to deal with what encroachments we can barely even see in a map, we're going to sell off an area bigger than the provincial park that's being leased at the end of the walkway on Lake Road. Lot reconfiguration is clean and should be the prescribed remedy. Once when I had a different job, they teach us about hiring, that sort of slogan at the top is what they taught us. Past behavior predicts future behavior. When the city accommodated encroachments in the past, they've re-encroached. Both properties which were expanded or reconfigured, did I already read this? Both properties which were expanded or reconfigured to resolve encroachments are again encroaching. Constantly selling land and reconfiguring land will not solve the problem. Enforcement will at some point be required. Fencing was brought up by a number of councillors. Provincial law enables council to direct a landowner to install a fence. The private field of Loudon Park Trail was listed as a problem in the Loudon Park Plan. Selling parkland will make privatization of the lake, or of the walkway, even worse. Fencing could solve the privatization problem. I'm going to go quickly through this one. The survey itself created a lot of confusion and is creating a lot of mess. For some reason, it only takes a little bit of Lake Road, even though it was gazetted in the newspaper and the agenda that it's all of Lake Road. It's not. It's just a portion of it. This particular plan that is attached to it also says it's all natural boundary, yet the same survey identified some of it as fill in a previous plan. Part of the dedicated land has been reallocated to a different road, which I didn't see in the bylaw. It's not stated in the bylaw. I wasn't sure why not, and I didn't know if that was council's direction. And I also didn't know why the rest of the road wasn't being closed. Why are the following parts of Lake Road not included in the road closure? Lake Road in Victoria, which is where the Centennial Building the Community Association built is. The Shoreline, Lake Road in Corunna, Lake Road in Norwell, Rocky Beach in the Point. The bylaw closure plan will create a patchwork mess. This is the small portion of the plan that's attached. The white is the plan. I superimposed it onto Plan 318A, which again, the shoreline's not surveyed in these old maps. However, you can see that when they did that plan, it's almost a direct match. I mean, it bobs in and out, but again, it's an estimate. And it shows how, we're only closing about half of it. And I think this is important because I know when staff kindly came out to the Community Association, they were sort of saying, oh, well, we're not actually losing any land because there's been accretion. And we were kind of confused by that. And I wanted to show that the park has always been roughly the width of a full road, which should be about 66 feet. That was what the rules were back then. Maybe a little less and some, maybe a little more because it wasn't surveyed shoreline. But if we go down this route, we're definitely selling off a huge chunk of the park. So, and this talks about the natural boundary. Just read the second bullet there. In 1983, when City Council dedicated this to the Crown as park, in addition to it already being a road, they just described it nice and cleanly. The law allows that, and it dedicated the entire park. Crown land. If Lake Road is not dedicated to the Crown as park, then why are we leasing a portion of it for Loudon Park? I'm not sure if all of council is aware, but the end of it is leased. The lease expires in 2027. It's a 30-year lease, and we had a 20-year lease before that, I believe. Maybe it was 10. So it's sort of messy. We've got all these different jurisdictions. We're going to try and raise title on something which the Community Association believes is Crown land still. Land use issues. Verbally, staff has reported this road closure to help make lots bigger so larger buildings can be built because there's minimum coverage bylaws. The bylaws state that riparian zone can't be included in calculations when I read them. Other conflicting information has also been said, which will create a need for numerous and future variances in bylaws. So the conflicting information is confusing and messy. Erosion and good planning may require relocation of the trail closer to the houses. Selling parkland makes this messy. It limits the options, undermines the park, and will create more private public conflict. I was delighted earlier listening to the community consultation about the other walkway plan, and because to me that was really encouraging, and it frustrates me that I'm up here talking about this. So this process sort of goes against everything that we should have faith in: the OCP, the bylaws, park planning, community charter, park dedications, trail park plan, and park planning guidelines. Every document I could find on trail guidelines and parks, this kind of goes against. So I want some clean solutions so we can all not make a mess. So here's some positive. Deal with any real encroachments on Loudon Walkway through lot reconfiguration. It's a win-win for everybody. Require fencing when needed. Direct staff to actively monitor Loudon Walkway for illegal activities which diminish the park, such as illegal tree removal, limbing, plantings, shoreline damage, illegal storage, or other offenses in a riparian way and zoned park. Support Wellington Town Site's unique setback and lot coverage patterns in a future neighborhood plan. Give neighborhood planning the same level of support and urgency which has been given to selling off the parkland. Please vote against this bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any questions for you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Next delegation is Kerwood Agar. Good evening, sir.
Hi.
Can we get your address for the record, please?
4097 Victoria Avenue.
Thank you.
Mr. Murchie, my neighbor, I think said most of the relevant points. Some of this will be a repeat. The plan as presented to close Lake Road and subsequently sell the land to private citizens, I think has several concerning details. The encroachments. Several of the prior properties that are to benefit from this land transfer do not actually have any structural encroachments onto the parkland. It would appear that these landowners are to be rewarded for illegally planting extensions of their backyards into existing parkland. A delegation at the last council meeting stated that they had been taking care of the parkland. I would have to disagree. One does not take care of parkland by clearing native plants and hiring professional landscapers to extend their backyard or to improve their views of the lake. To reward this behavior seems like a dangerous precedent. Of the properties that do have structural encroachments, I don't understand why the extent of the proposed land transfer has to take place. If a corner of a deck encroaches by 18 inches onto existing parkland, why offer to sell 20 feet of land? The proposed new property lines will not fully deal with the current encroachments. Councillor Bestwick, you raised the concern at last council meeting of the city's liability in concerning with people's encroachment onto public lands. These proposed new property lines will not remove all of the existing encroachments. Beyond the proposed new property lines, there will still be illegal plantings, tire swings hanging from parkland trees, stairs dug into the lake bank to access illegal docks, and even fences will still be on parkland. This proposal does not solve the problems that exist. I believe that it will only embolden past offenders. There was also a statement said that this will not affect how Loudon Parkway, the walkway actually looks. I feel that if these private boundaries were to extend farther towards the walkway, under current bylaws, you're allowed to build an 8-foot privacy fence. So now if we have a smaller park, and now I'm walking along the parkway with the lake on one side and an 8-foot privacy fence on the other, the park does feel and look very differently to the people that use it. That's it.
Thank you very much. I don't see any questions for you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sammer, does any of your staff wish to respond to any of the questions that were brought forward?
Your Worship, I think when we first brought this over, staff did a presentation to you at that time, but if there's any specific questions you have of council, we're certainly happy to answer those.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you very much. I just wish to confirm, or to have you confirm, reconfirm, that we're not in any violation of any existing bylaws. We approve this at third reading.
I would say, Your Worship, we're not in violation of bylaws, but more importantly, we're being consistent with the legislative requirements that are set out when we dispose of surplus road.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there someone prepared to move the motion? Councillor Brennan. Bylaw.
Okay, move that highway closure and dedication removal Lake Road and a portion of 102 or 102nd Street bylaw number 217, number 7246, pass third reading.
Thank you. Do you wish to second, Councillor Bestwick?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Show Councillor Brennan opposed, Councillor Fuller opposed. Motion passes. Thank you. Next item is under. Next item is the bylaw status sheet. There's no requirement to receive it. It's for information only. Next item, under 16A, Councillor Yoakum re-cannabis dispensaries. At the October 16th meeting, Councillor Yoakum advised he would be bringing forward the following notice of motion for consideration. 1, that Council prohibits any cannabis dispensary from operating within 150 meters of any school, daycare, youth community center, or playground. That Council directs staff and bylaw services to contact the RCMP directly regarding any dispensaries operating within 150 meters from any school, daycare, youth community center, or playground, and that if any dispensaries within the operation within 150 meters of any school, daycare, youth community center, or playground, that they be denied a business license if the City of Nanaimo chooses to license dispensaries at a later date. And 2, that Council establish a select committee on cannabis legalization and regulation. So we have a delegation, and that's Mr. Matthew O'Donnell.
Five minutes.
Good afternoon, sir, or good evening, sir. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Matthew O'Donnell. I'm here from Nanaimo, British Columbia, obviously. I'm speaking as a private citizen this evening in complete support of Councillor Yoakum's motion. I would just like to start just by thanking Councillor Yoakum. I know he's not here this evening, but for putting forth this motion. In my opinion, as a private citizen, I feel that it is long overdue, considering the circumstances with the dispensaries here in Nanaimo. Very briefly, I'll just give a quick background of what's happened with 2 dispensaries here in the last year during 2017. There was an issue earlier on this year with a dispensary called Leaf Laboratories. Essentially, they decided to open up their business next door to a daycare center. They didn't last long. Most of the legitimate dispensaries here in Nanaimo actually spoke in unity in opposition to this particular dispensary being opened up next door to a daycare facility. And quite soon after, the RCMP raided that dispensary, and obviously they are not in business here. A more recent example would be just several weeks ago, a dispensary known as Clone Corner or Canna Corner on Nickel Street. They chose to open up and be in operation directly next door to a children's karate center called Skills Karate Center. I spoke to the business owners at Skills before it started reaching the news, basically trying to come up with some sort of compromise. It was very apparent very quickly that the owner of this particular dispensary had no interest in working out some sort of agreement with these business owners at the Kids Karate Center. I'm not going to speak on their behalf, but I will say that while that dispensary was in business, that karate center actually lost business. Parents were taking their children out of the karate program. It was costing these entrepreneurs who pay fees for business licenses money, and it's not fair to those business owners. With that said, with Councillor Yoakum's motion, it's relatively simple. With the 150 meters, it's already been reviewed here, but just to answer maybe some questions that council might have. The 150 meters, if you look at the regulations for liquor stores, It's essentially the exact same number, 150 meters from any area where children congregate, playgrounds, etc. So basically, it's just a level playing field with the liquor stores in that regard. As far as dispensaries that are in contravention of this, essentially, you have two options, as stated in the motion. Contacting the RCMP directly, it would send an extremely strong message if a dispensary, hypothetically, decided to open up shop next door to a place where children congregate. And if city council or the city staff contacted the RCMP directly, that sends us a very strong message to the dispensary in question, and at the same time, it also alleviates some fears from the community at large. If you speak to most dispensary owners, most of them wish to be contributing members of the business community here in Nanaimo. There's a ton of potential with dispensaries and cannabis in general once legalization happens, and nobody really wants to rock that boat. So by putting this 150 meter in place, any of the dispensaries who don't wish to play ball and really have no interest in being contributing members to the business community here in Nanaimo, they'll be exposed relatively quickly, and with police action, hopefully they won't be around very long if they do choose to be open next door to a daycare facility. On top of that, with business licensing, I mean, it's coming, no matter what. It's coming to every municipality with legalization. So you as a council and city staff would be sending a very strong message by just saying straight goods. If you guys aren't willing to play ball right now and not be open next door to places where children congregate, then we're not going to issue a business license when the time comes. I feel that's fair, and I feel that's also sending a very strong message to that community. And finally, because I know that I only have about a minute left, the second part of the motion would be that councils form a select committee or a task force, essentially, to basically start to work on the regulation within the city of Nanaimo. Realistically, a lot of different stakeholders need to be consulted, from the dispensary owners to the RCMP to VHA to city staff. And basically, it's time that we start collecting that information, also the community at large. And we need to start streamlining that information so that we can make some strong recommendations both to city staff and to council when the time comes. And it's coming relatively quickly. So I'm just once again speaking in very strong support of this particular motion, and I think it's a very, very, very positive step in the right direction.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bestwick.
I was just going to mention, thank you very much, Matthew.
Thank you.
I appreciate you coming and speaking to this. I was just going to mention about number 2, the portion number 2, establish a select committee. It would appear logical to me to have a task force made up of the stakeholders, and, as you just mentioned, as opposed to a select committee, because a task force will expire.
That's correct.
Once legislation and all that stuff happens in 2018 at some point in time. So just getting ahead of the curve with the task force to determine and define what this looks like. But thanks very much. Appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks.
No further questions for you. Councillor Fuller, do you have a question?
No, actually not.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Gurry, just to confirm, both this one and the next one are notices of motion.
No, Your Worship, sorry about that. They are under other business on this agenda and not under notice of motion because they were previously.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so is someone prepared to move the motion?
So move one. Oh, sorry. Move.
So you wish to take the Sari Adam?
I think we ought to.
Okay, thank you. So you're moving one? Yes. Councillor Bestwick moving one, and Councillor Kipps is seconding. Okay, discussion. Councillor Armstrong.
I mean, I just have some concerns about that because you're saying that some can operate and some can't in this motion. That's how I read the motion, that if you're within 150, we're not going to allow you to operate, but anything else is fair game to operate. So I have a concern with that because then you become down to it's selective enforcement, which is problematic from a court perspective. And like, I don't know, like, I mean, right now the RCMP will act if there's complaints that are received and there's information of drug trafficking, because technically any cannabis shop that's operating right now is operating illegally. So now we're being asked to decide which ones should be allowed and which ones shouldn't. So I just struggle with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
My problem with this one is it's interesting because the last delegation mentioned these skills. And, you know, it's great that the people beside it removed their so-called dispensary. But when I read this bylaw, this proposed motion, I should say, not bylaw, there were 3 up above within 150 meters of it. And it would not qualify with this definition to have them not be within 150 meters of them, because this talks about school, daycare, youth community center, or playground. My understanding is Skills is none of the above. And it also mentions that they be denied a business license if the City of Nanaimo chooses to license dispensaries at a later date. So it's just a little bit confusing to me. You know, if they do decide to do something at a later date, the bylaw will likely address that, however it comes up. I do like the idea that we establish a select committee on cannabis legislation and regulation, but I'm not good with the way the motion stands. I actually like the way Mr. O'Donnell put it, because the way he phrased it, it would actually see the ones at the front end of the building removed if, but only if, Nanaimo chooses to license dispensaries at a later date. It still leaves them there now, but would remove them if. And I forget the exact phrasing, a youth congregation point or something like that. Because a lot of places where youth do hang out don't meet the criteria in this motion. So I'm not going to support it at this time. I would support number 2 when it comes along.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Hong.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. I will support this motion. At this point, I think we need something out there, whether it's legal or not, is going to be an issue right now because of the fact that cannabis is still illegal. Until we're told otherwise, the RCMP are going to do what the RCMP are going to do. So I think this is just a note for the people that are considering opening up that we're watching. They can still open up. I don't think we can do anything except the RCMP because this isn't something that the province has given us the ability to mandate like they do with liquor licensing. But I think this is a good note to let people know. I think the key thing that we should be looking at, I think, is the task force and number 2. So I'll be supporting both of these motions going forward, just to let them know that we are being proactive. We're doing something. What we can do, I don't know yet. We haven't been told. But at least we're in front of it. Like I said, this could change. I don't know. You know, there's no bylaws that we're forming. There's nothing in procedure that is going to be held the city that we're not doing anything illegal. I think this is just a note that we are moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
I went to the cannabis panel at UBCM. And so different communities were talking about their experiences with cannabis dispensary regulations, and the one that Victoria had that did prove to be problematic was that you couldn't have 2 dispensaries within X number of meters from one another, and that was proving to be a problem. So I asked her, did I say it was Marianne Alto? I asked her if she regretted having done the bylaw, and she said, no, she didn't, and she put a lot of thinking into it. She wasn't, I think, on board right away. So, and she is a lawyer, so she has a good mind for these things. She said that, but she did regret that one piece where they weren't going to allow 2 on one block or something. She really felt at the end that was up to the market to deal with, and that the restrictions on how far they could be from schools or places where children gather, etc., were appropriate, and she was happy to be working within that. We have those kinds of rules for liquor stores, and so I'm not sure that would be sort of deciding what we choose to, to enforce, and those we don't choose to enforce. It's clear, there's no choice here. Is it within 150 meters of a school? Yes, well, apparently sometimes that doesn't matter, but generally speaking, those measurements mean something, and they can be enforced. So I don't have a major problem with this. I think, we have to start. We've got to anticipate this, and we've been a little bit slow off the mark, but I don't think we're so far behind that we can't catch up. So I will support 1 as well as 2. For sure, I will support 2. And I agree with the change to task force. But.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, thank you. I think before we even start looking at that, we need to find out what the province is going to make on decisions, number 1, because number 2, this may be a moot point if they do go to what they're proposing, which is the liquor stores to do the selling. So that would be a moot point when it comes down to dispensaries. Secondly, I think by doing this, we're endorsing illegal action. In my opinion, we're endorsing illegal action because we're saying some can operate, some can't without a bylaw. So I think that's problematic. I think from a policing perspective, it's extremely problematic that you're telling me it's okay for these guys to operate over here, but it's not okay for these ones when there's no bylaw to state that. So I have an issue with that from an enforcement perspective. I also have an issue with the fact that the courts are looking at these very carefully as to where we're moving with it in wake of the forthcoming legislation from the feds as well as provincial. So, I totally understand and get the purpose behind it. And I agree with the purpose behind it, but I don't know if we're there yet unless we're prepared to make a bylaw about whether we're going to give business licenses or we're going to endorse it. I certainly agree with the Committee on the Legalization and Regulation, but I still think until we find out what the provincial requirements are going to be for municipalities, we're way ahead of the game, and we may be wasting a lot of valuable time when they come out and say, if they do, and I'm not saying this, but they could come say it's going to be done by drugstores or it's going to be done by the Liquor Control and Licensing Board, and that's it. So I think we're jumping the gun on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. I certainly sympathize with the intent of this motion in that it looks to protect the younger segment of our population. But I do have concerns with it, and I tend to agree with the comments that Councillor Armstrong has made. In my mind, this is premature. And I know that we want to be ready for when changes come, but we don't know what the provincial legislation is going to look like, and it will eventually get to us. And when it does, and we debate or consider licensing or possible licensing of these premises, I think there's going to be a lot of other factors that we'll be looking at as well. So this will only be one small part of the puzzle. So to me, it is premature. I think I would support number 2 when we come to that, but I don't think now is the time for number 1, and I don't think I can support it at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
To what Councillor Hong stated with regard to actually doing something, this actually does not do something. It states quite clearly if the city chooses to license dispensaries at a later date. So it's kind of like putting the cart before the horse. Logically, as Spock would say, the task force or select committee would be put in place before any of the other stuff is put in place. Because, as I say, I would rather see this much broader than school, daycare, youth community center, or playground. But if we lock ourselves into that, then what happens with the committee? If the committee chooses to add to it, we change it again. But it all hinges on if the city of Nanaimo chooses to license dispensaries at a later date. So, yes, it is premature in my opinion as well.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Well, motion number one sounds like me a run-on sentence, but I do think that it does provide some direction and doesn't do nothing. That council directs staff and bylaw services to contact the RCMP directly regarding any dispensaries operating with 150 meters, blah, blah, blah. Now, if I'm mistaken, somebody please correct me, that we have closed down, or the RCMP closed down, an operation that was within 150 meters of a daycare. So, as opposed to having nothing that would suggest that sounds like a pretty good idea, we received a considerable amount of complaints about the dispensary in operation very near a daycare on Terminal Avenue. So what happened? Well, the RCMP went in and closed it down. Was there other violations that they were doing, other things that they shouldn't have been doing? I don't know, probably. So for me, what this motion does is it sets down a marker. Is there meat to it? Is there enough meat on the bone? Do we have the law and the legality and all of that stuff? Maybe not. But it sets down a marker for all of those rogue operations or any of the real operations that are operating to say, if and when the time comes, the city is already taking steps toward a similar retail liquor store outlet operation. They're going there. That's where they're going. They're going down there. So unless you intend to come to Nanaimo and just be, as Mr. O'Donnell said, a rogue operator, just going to roll in here, wild, wild west, do whatever I feel like doing, whenever I feel like doing it, and if and when the province or the feds or whoever come in with some rules that give us some meat on the bones to hand out licenses, business licenses, this to me sends a message. So you might want to think about, if you're operating within 150 meters, you might want to think about relocation. Because eventually, it looks like that's where the city's going. Again, if somebody wants to correct me that we closed down one because of where it was located, apparently not because of what it was doing, about where it was located and what it was doing. I'm seeing heads shake, so I look forward to being corrected. So for me, I'm going to support number one because at least we're setting down a marker. We're sending a message. If somebody wants to take us to court because we're trying to do the right thing, then fine. Fine. I think we're trying to do the right thing because we've already done it once. We've already done it once with no teeth, with no nothing. So at least this gives us an opportunity to have something to start the process to be somewhat proactive. I'll support it.
Thank you. Mr. Lindsay, did you wish to respond to Councillor Bestwick?
Thank you, Worship. Not directly to comments that Councillor Bestwick had, but I think some of the discussion, just maybe a couple of points I'd like to add, is, and it's been mentioned this evening, yes, we know that come next summer, the federal government's told us that legalization of recreational cannabis is going to occur. We don't know, as some councillors have mentioned, what the framework is going to look like in BC. We've started to see in the last few weeks, a couple of months, other provinces, the decisions they're making about are they going to be run by their liquor control boards, for example, as is the case in Ontario. But what we do know is that we're going to need to make some decisions between now and ultimately when whatever the program is gets unveiled next summer. So I think it's appropriate that we're looking at how we anticipate dealing with it. It's somewhat of a guessing game at this point because we still don't know what that framework is, but having some general discussions about what our criteria in this community and our values would be, I think is appropriate. Much like we do when we looked at liquor stores. We had this whole debate come up in the community when we looked at private licensed retail stores, liquor stores. What's the appropriate separation from schools and daycares? So from that, the discussions we've had at a staff level is that one of the things that we have on our work plan to do is actually an update of the liquor control strategy. And our thought internally was, well, could we look at rolling in the discussion that's occurring here because it's so very similar? And do we have that discussion as part of that liquor control strategy and with that committee rather than having multiple committees looking at very similar issues? So that's the one comment I'd have on the second. The first one, ultimately, as staff's read of that, motion number 1, is at this point we are simply notifying the RCMP in that first half of that motion. How the RCMP proposes, or how they proceed on any given file is up to them. They don't share that with us. What were the factors they used to determine to proceed with the files they did in the past few months is only known to them. But what I would say is if the first half of that motion was adopted, we would certainly notify them every time we became aware of one that was operating within 150 meters. I would suggest to you that the second part of that motion, starting with the and where it says and that if any dispensary is within operation, and it goes on to say they'd be denied a business license, I think that motion is kind of presupposing where we're going to end up here. Like I don't think it's necessarily it's necessary to meet the intent of what I've heard council talk about tonight. I think you could pass the first half of that motion and be more general with the second part, putting down a marker that you want a committee to look at this issue, whether it be rolled in with liquor control strategy or not.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
I like what Dale said. We have upwards of at least 15 of them in city now, and that's just, that's still growing. At last count anyway, that Nelda came to us, it was 15, I believe. So we need to grapple with this, I think, anyway. And it's not moot if we work on this, because every piece of work that we do on this informs our choices later. So it isn't wasted. And as Dale suggested, with the amendment on that first paragraph to remove, and that if any dispensary is within operation, yada, yada, they be denied a business license. Yeah, I think we can withdraw that. We can amend this motion to end at community center or playground, period. And then that just sets out some general guidelines on how we want to approach when we find cannabis being sold close to schools and daycares, etc. This is the council that set up a overdose prevention site in our parking lot at City Hall, and that was used to move forward and get another overdose prevention site, one that's licensed and not in contravention of anything. So sometimes you do what you need to do. We can see these things are not being they're not being heavily enforced by the RCMP, but they are enforcing via the guidelines that is in the first part of this. They are enforcing the ones where there's cannabis stores within 150 meters of places where children congregate. So This is my understanding, and all I have is what I read in the newspaper about when they do it. But at any rate, I propose that the motion number 1 be amended by removing the section after community center or playground, and it should just end, period.
Well, I don't think we can do that because the person whose motion this is not here.
Yeah, he wasn't here, so somebody else moved it.
Yes, but I think we need to leave that to Councillor Yocum. If you wish to defeat this and come up with a new resolution, Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would suggest that you either withdraw it, if you all would like to consider amending it, and have Councillor Yocum look at that and bring it back, and or you could defeat it and ask him to rework on the wording. Either way would work, but yes, I agree that he should be the one to make the amendments if you want any.
Okay, I would feel more comfortable defeating it and then bringing it back with an amended motion. Before we go too much further, are you completed, Councillor Brennan?
Well, I'd just like to say that once a motion has been moved and seconded, it belongs to the Assembly. That's who it belongs to, not to any individual.
Well, you do have a point there.
Yes, Your Worship, that's why I suggested either withdrawing the motion, the mover or seconder could withdraw it,
Okay.
and or defeating it.
Okay, so the mover was?
Councillor Beswick, and Councillor Kipp seconded it.
Great, okay. Councillors, are you prepared to do that?
Do what?
Withdraw the motion and bring it back in a new form.
Well,
That's what's being recommended by the clerk.
okay, you're asking me if I'm prepared to do that, and I'm just going to give you my explanation why I'm not.
Okay.
Oh, no, I'm not. Is this a procedural? Are we procedurally not following procedure? And if we aren't, because the original mover of the notice of motion isn't here, then as far as I'm concerned, I've just wasted 30 minutes. So if it's not procedurally incorrect, then we're just going to defeat it because we can't get to a resolution on the debate on it. Then no, I won't support moving off this subject matter as it sits today, because there's been a motion made, it's been seconded, we've debated it, we've had a delegation, and I think we need to come to a resolution.
And I proposed an amendment, and it was seconded.
Ms. Gurry.
I wasn't asked about the amendment as the mover, but it's fine.
Thank you, Your Worship. So because there was an amendment and there was a seconder, it could be a formal amendment to be voted on. So not a friendly amendment. It could formally be voted on. If it was defeated, then you would vote on the original motion that was moved and seconded. If it was passed, you would vote on the original motion as amended.
Great, thank you. All right, so we'll proceed in that fashion. Before we do, Ms. Sammer, did you have something to add to what Mr. Lindsay was saying?
So I think that this motion requires a second look at how it's drafted, because the way it's drafted is that council prohibit any cannabis dispensary. So it is actually making a direction that prohibition be enforced by staff. You're not saying council disagrees with having dispensaries located at A, B, and C and want staff to notify RCMP to take action. That's not how that reads, if that's the intention of what it is. And so then if you're calling for enforcement of prohibition, Mr. Lindsay's advised that there's a couple different things that you could close down every single one in the city. And so now we're selecting a few to do that to without sort of a methodology for that. And if prohibition is able under the zoning bylaw and that they don't have business licenses, it is an enforcement activity. So if you mean it to read council supports the principles that these things shouldn't be located in these places and that staff should take steps to notify the RCMP of such institutions, or whatever they're called, dispensaries, that type of amendment should be made to it.
Thank you.
I'm sorry to bring that late. We try to be respectful when these things get drafted to reflect the intent of the person that brought the motion forward. It's unfortunate that he's not here this evening, but we do have to give you that extra advice on there.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
So I would like to refer this to staff for assistance with the drafting. Pardon? Yeah, well, I'm referring the motion to staff, and that's the rules. So, yes, no, I didn't refer.
No, she's referring it back to
bring
staff.
the whole issue back to staff to redraft.
Yep. Is there a seconder? Okay. It's been motion to refer by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Fuller. No discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Now I would move the number 2, which is that council establish a select committee on cannabis task force, on cannabis legalization and regulation.
So your motion is that council establish a task force on cannabis legalization and regulation?
Yes.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Fuller. Okay, just give me a second here. Okay, discussion. Councillor Kipp.
Thank you very much. My first time speaker on this issue. I got pushed aside on the other one. This is an important step. I mean, it's coming in July. I'm not in a conflict, am I? Because the question was, did I ever exhale? So I hope I'm not in a conflict. But yeah, we have to get on with this. It's coming. It puts a lot of our bylaws, our police officers, everybody in businesses, in rental places, in houses, in apartments. There's a lot to go along with this. And I'm not saying that it's not happening now. And the reason this is becoming regulated to be recreational is because it's British Columbia, it's Canada. And so we have to get on with it. So I think what Councillor Yoakum's point was, is this is the type of thing we might as a council move to that committee. So I would suggest when it gets referred, this got referred back. So this is the type of things that council, obviously I think the 150 meters is a good point. Looking at the strategy, if it's an upper level on a different road, how does that affect? So I'm glad it's going back. But the establishment of this, would it be called, I don't think it's a select committee, it's an ad hoc committee, not a select, or so that would be, or a task force and versus a committee. But I support this. I think there's some interesting people that could be involved in it. From the health authority and our bylaw people and the people who are in the cannabis business too. So I support the motion going to an ad hoc committee.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Be the fly in the ointment here then. I won't be supporting the task force at this point in time. If we're going to send the motion back to council to work on, to bring it forward in November 20th or 27th or whenever it is, then I would like they're kind of tied together. So when we receive a rewritten number 1 that will address the concerns, and then at that time we can debate it and establish a task force committee if necessary in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I don't dislike the idea of a task force, of course, but we might as well get clarity on what it is that we're going to do as a council before setting up a task force. Or set up a task force and they can tell us what to do. Because they're the professionals, they're the experts, they can tell us what to do. So, I mean, sure, set up a task force, sure. Don't set one up because we're going to have a new motion anyways. Sure. It really, again, this is very frustrating that we just spent 40 minutes discussing something, to me, that we've had on our agenda as a notice of motion for 2 weeks. And nobody said anything that I know of. I haven't received any emails from my colleagues that say, hey, I got a concern about this cannabis dispensary thing. How are you feeling about it? Here we just spent 45 minutes. Now it's going to be 45.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. I'll support number 2. To me, it comes first, and the contents of number 1 might be something that comes out of the task force, and I'm sure a lot of other things would as well. So I think that's where we need to start. We need to start as quickly as possible, and hopefully that would operate in conjunction with the work that staff has already done on this issue. So yes, I will support establishing a task force.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was going to say. The paragraph above with the 150 meters and the enforcement ideas, that would be something that the task force would be looking at. So as Councillor Thorpe said, first the task force and then the tasks that they look at, this would be one of them.
Thank you. Ms. Sammer?
It would be helpful if between now and the next meeting that we have, if Council can send us some of your opinions on the mandate and scope of work that the committee would carry out and potential membership stakeholders, that type of thing, because as part of the report, we can build portions of that in. To understand, like you say, a task force, well, who, what? And be technically, it will be a select committee. You can call it a task force, but it'll be for a finite time with a specific mission.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan?
Excuse me. I think that's a good idea from Ms. Samra, and what I would like would be a copy of the liquor retail policy that we have, so that I'm sure that it would be form a good basis for the next steps around cannabis.
Thank you. I'm quite troubled with this one. And the only reason why I am is because I attended one of the presentations at UBCM where Councillor Marianne Alto from Victoria said that they were absolutely gobsmacked at how much money the City of Victoria has spent trying to develop licensing and regulation of cannabis. The other thing that she said was that we believe that every piece of work that we've done to date may well go into the round file and be thrown in the garbage. So I can't support this until such time as we get definite rules from the province. They're going to rule on it like they did with, like they've done with liquor stores and so on and so forth. Ontario's forging ahead. If BC is going to be the ones that are going to determine how it's going to be distributed, and we can follow in behind that. Jumping ahead at this particular point, I think we're going to find ourselves in exactly the same situation as what Victoria has, and that is it all gets thrown into the garbage. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. I like Mr. Lindsay's idea. We are undertaking the liquor strategy review. I think if I'm not mistaken, that's 100,000 plus. So if we're going to be doing another full review, what's this going to cost? Because I'm not really interested in spending money on this before we know the actual rules, or we can roll this in to what Mr. Lindsay said into the liquor review as well, having another mandate added to that. Because I just need some staff clarification on when that is going to take place, because we've asked that 2 years ago, over a year ago, if I'm not mistaken, almost 2 years, and that hasn't even gotten here. So I don't know when this is going to fall in line, because not to try to be greedy, I know that this is important, but there were other things in line that I want to know when this is going to get done, as opposed to the other staff that's on staff's plate. So if I can get an answer from staff when we expect that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thanks. Quickly, many compliments to staff under the leadership and guidance of Ms. Samra keeping us out of this mess for as long as we've been kept out of this mess, and say, stay away from it. Don't do anything. Don't do what Victoria did. Don't do what Port Alberni did. Don't do. At much expense, at much political expense, at much capital. So thanks for keeping us out of the mess. I don't have any issues with this being the 150-meter rule and so on and so forth. And I will not be supporting the task force committee as it stands this evening. Thank you.
I just wanted to say before we close this down, again, I agree, and I've stated it publicly, that I agree with Councillor Bestwick that I'm glad that we did take this wait and see attitude. You know, with all the expenses that other municipalities are finding with this, including I think Vancouver's got 50 some odd charter challenges against them. Victoria's, you know, just can't believe how much they've spent. Having said that, we do need to be ready when the province do come out with their rules. I'm not sure, has any members of council heard Minister Farnworth say anything about July 1st, 2018 being too soon? Because I don't believe he said that. I think the province of BC has been very emphatic that they'll meet the deadline. Mr. Lindsay?
Your Worship, all I would know is what I've read in, of course, there was the Premier's meeting, I think it was maybe earlier this year, where I think they collectively tried to encourage the federal government to push it back, and there hasn't been any response from the federal government. So our assumption is July of next year, we need to be ready.
Right. No, thank you. So if council does approve this tonight, I would ask that if they put a task force together or a select committee or whatever it's going to be, that we be mindful of the fact that we don't want to jump ahead of ourselves. We don't want to jump ahead of the province. That we bear in mind their timeline. All right. So it's been moved and seconded. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? So, show Councillor Armstrong, Thorpe, Bestwick, and Mayor McKay opposed. The motion is defeated. Next item, Councillor Kipp, re-Seacams.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Because there's a situation in Nanaimo, and I'll say across many places now, for storage and units and the use of the facilities and properties, therefore I would ask the Council direct staff to develop a permitted use for shipping containers, also known as Seacans, to include the requirements of zoning use, fee structures on a temporary and permanent basis for the now non-conforming shipping containers on industrial and commercial properties in the city of Nanaimo, and further to look to update the residential permitted uses. And if I can have a seconder for that, I'd like to speak to it.
Yeah.
Well, we do have a delegation.
Oh, a delegation? There you go.
Okay, so you've introduced it?
I'll hold off for that now.
Okay, thank you. So we have a delegation, Mr. Richard Scott.
Thank you, Mayor and Council and staff. My name is Richard Scott. I reside here in Nanaimo. I just wanted to put my 2 cents in on this particular topic because I know, as somebody that did purchase a Seacan, that the cost required to buy a Seacan and put it in place for a secure storage is significantly less than if you were to buy to build an out structure, and it's significantly easier to just buy one and have it put down in your yard versus getting all the building permits that are required to build an out structure. I think that originally there was a bylaw brought into effect in Nanaimo because of the eyesore that they have become in certain circumstances. I think that if council was to suggest maybe making so the Seacans weren't an eyesore, maybe putting cedar panels around them so that it's not detracting from our neighbors' property values in the case of residential. I think in industrial sense, there's not much of a concern. However, in residential, it would be an eyesore. So if council would maybe consider amending the bylaw to allow for CCANs, but maybe make them to not be an eyesore, just maybe cedar paneling or whatever it may be. And that's about all I have to say on that matter.
Thank you. Thank you very much. In actual fact, it was the notion of not allowing them was that they were seen by some as being a structure that evades taxes.
Okay.
In other words, rather than build a building, people were buying multiple CCANs, stacking them one on top of each other, as opposed to building a building. Okay. And I think that was one of the main things that the main concerns that there were with respect to it. But I think Councillor Kipp is correct. I think it's time to take another look at this.
Right.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you much.
I'm sorry, Councillor Brennan.
I wanted to confirm that this is not intended to be in a residential area, right? So these you would find in industrial or commercial, but certainly not on your neighbor's lawn or in their driveways.
All right. Did you not mention looking at using them in residential?
If I can, it was put in here further to update the residential permitted uses. I guess to bring them into current standards, more than updating it, I don't want to see them on residential property permanently, but there is a necessity for them for storage for short term. If someone's doing a renovation of the house, they can put a CCAN there and do that now, just to make sure that those are up to date and how we look. And if they're going to be there for a certain or place somewhere, that maybe there is some short-term screening to go with it and those type of things. So that's the idea, is expand the thinking on it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Fuller, did you wish to speak to the delegation?
Well, it goes to making these things look better. The movement is afoot, and I believe the city has already put in a request with the province to obtain about 50 of these that have already been converted to homes. So when does a CCAN become a residence, and when does it not? And that is what I thought further to look to update residential permitted use means, which is part of it. So it's all part of the same thing, I think.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to the delegation? If not, please. Thank you very much, sir. So, Councillor Kipp, did you wish to speak to your motion?
I guess this is trying to be progressive versus regressive and going after somebody for having it. One thing I want to mention is that we require probably some form of fire ventilation. Staff is aware that there was incidents where this was a sealed container impinged by a fire, and there was actually an explosion that blew the doors off of the container. So there would be the ability for fire ventilation and those types of things within it. And further to that is that with the residential is the actual use for housing, and more communities now, some people have built some beautiful homes out of CCANs, and that would require a permitting. It would require to meet code for insulations, windows, ventilation, access, siting. And I also, like I say, with this, I believe there would be a permitting process to locate them and how they're stacked on site and if landscaping is required. So that's my purpose, is to move this to staff to develop a use for the CCANs that are existing in the community. And that would be a fee for having them in place. So there is recovery of that lost tax revenue. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So, it's been moved and seconded.
I missed who seconded it the first time. Oh, sorry, Councillor Fuller did. Thank you.
So, Councillor Bestwick is seconding it. Thank you. All right, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
I think you skipped over 15, notice of motion, because I have a notice of motion, and it went right into other business as far as I could tell.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So could I do
Go ahead.
a notice of motion?
I apologize.
So the motion at the next council meeting would be that I move that the Committee of the Whole meetings be returned to the Shaw Auditorium.
Thank you very much. Okay, next item is question period.
No, Your Worship, there was
Oh,
a...
pardon me. I
yes.
didn't write yours down either. Sorry.
Yeah.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you. At the last committee of the whole, I made a notice of motion, and I'm going to bring it forward that council directs staff to research and prepare a bylaw for the regulation for abandoned and derelict commercial and industrial properties. Yeah, and I need a second.
Notice of motion, isn't it?
No, that was the notice previous. This is the motion.
Second that.
Okay, thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. Councillor Bestwick, do you wish to speak to it?
Could you just read me the motion again so that I can understand whether that includes commercial and industrial and retail or residential also?
I only have commercial and industrial, so it includes retail and commercial.
So the reason that I asked that question is because I think I sent around what Vancouver has, after you made that notice of motion, and I didn't hear back from anybody, what Vancouver has adopted as a bylaw for, if you want to call it, abandoned homes or derelict homes or nobody living in the houses. So is there a possibility that it could include?
Yep, I could definitely amend that to include that residential as well, derelict commercial, residential, and industrial properties.
Uninhabited or whatever. Thank you.
Okay, so you wish to amend your motion?
Yes.
Has it been second? You're happy with that? Okay. Any other discussion? See, counts. Pardon me. Ms. Gurry.
Yeah, and not constable either. I didn't get it, so if I could get clarification of the amendment, that would be great. Thanks.
So if you can read it in its entirety, please, Councillor
Sounds
Hall.
good. That council directs staff to research and prepare a bylaw for the regulation for abandoned and derelict commercial, residential, and industrial properties.
Thank you very much. So it's been moved and seconded. Councillor Kipp.
Abandoned property, does that mean someone who's given up, not paying their taxes? Or does that mean a building not in use, no business licenses registered, those type of things? If the building's abandoned, my concern would be that there's nobody, no owner, that's abandoned to me. Or it's a half burnt out building on a piece of property that no insurance is somewhat abandoned.
I'm hoping that staff are going to come back with some options for us.
Okay.
I wanted to leave it broad that they can work on something. I didn't want to limit it too much.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
So if I could, is it your intent to also include properties that are no longer being used for their intended use? And if I could give you a couple of examples, it would be the brownfield gas station properties, where the oil companies are renewing their leases for another 5 to 10 years because it's cheaper than dealing with the property.
That would include it because from Mr. Mema, we can actually have those as different tax rates with regards to properties that aren't being used for what they were intended to be used for.
Right.
So, and that's what I'm hoping that staff are going to come back with, was options that they can have with different areas, especially with houses and industrial. Like I said, industrial lands are a lot harder to sell than commercial, so there could be something different that they can look at. So it could include that as well and everything else in there.
Okay, thank you. All right, I see no further speakers. Going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, there's one question by Mr. Terry Lee Wager.
Thanks.
My question is about the walkway and accessibility for those with physical handicaps, people in wheelchairs, vision problems, in particular the area that's going up to Stewart Avenue. How are these people with vision and or mobility problems going to access that part of the trail?
Okay, I would suggest that at this point in time, there's been no contemplation for that, but I can assure you this council will ensure that that walkway is accessible to all.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that it was on record that that was going to be a factor. Thank you.
Thank you. And you have another question?
Yes, it's yes, thank you. It's about the CCANs. Councillor Fuller said something about the city having a bid in for 50 CCANs set up for homes. Why is the city bidding for 50 CCANs set up as homes?
I can't guarantee that we're doing that at this particular point in time. The provincial government has come up with a program where they are looking at this type of housing, and we've expressed an interest in it.
So they'd be used for what type of housing? I don't understand that.
Well, they could conceivably be used for a simple single occupant home, or for a couple of occupants.
Okay, so I guess as a follow-up question, if I'm allowed another one, is
yes, go ahead.
What are the does the city presently have dwellings or homes that they rent out to people?
No.
So that would be a completely new thing. The city has
this is an initiative that is being put forward and conceived by the provincial government. So we've expressed an interest in that program.
So I guess I'm asking more questions now. Just one more, please. Am I correct then, is the provincial government is encouraging municipalities to set up alternative homes for people to deal with what? A homeless crisis, or?
Yes.
It just opens up endless questions, I'm afraid. Who would be taking care of these homes?
So let's just stop you right there.
Okay.
So the fact is your original question was concerning CCANs.
Very well.
Okay,
Thank you.
That was the agenda item.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Seeing as there's no more questions, we're about to adjourn. But before we do, it's been brought to my attention, and it's not very often I keep my phone on. Our city manager has some concerns that the actions tonight with respect to Mr. Gill may be misconstrued. And I want to ensure, Mr. Gill and his family that nothing that happened at this meeting tonight was intended to mock, to humiliate, or to embarrass Mr. Gill. And that if that's the way he's perceiving it in any way, him and his family, or anyone out there, I apologize for that misconception. It was not. There was some laughing that took place. It was because of the situation, and absolutely not intended to disrespect Mr. Gill in any way, shape, or form. Councillor Brennan.
Because I was the person who was talking to him, I think I should also apologize to him if he felt that I was mocking him in any way. What happened was he said, "I can't hear you." I tried to articulate several times. He said, "Can I come up there?" I asked the mayor if that was okay, because there's oftentimes some questions about whether people should walk around this table. So I motioned him up. I spend an awful lot of time with two of my friends who are both severely hearing impaired. And the method of talking to somebody with a hearing impairment is to make sure that you are looking at them and they can see your mouth, because that's a second clue to them to what you're saying. That was the purpose of that, and he did eventually understand what I was saying. So no offense intended, and I really hope it is seen as me having done my best to make sure that Mr. Gill could understand what I was wanting to find out, and that was if he was in a position to be able to affect the changes we wanted.
Thank you very much.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Councillor Bestwick. Seconded by Councillor Kipp. All those in favor?